welcome to episode 140 of Coffee and Co-Read, your source for all things literary with Kristen
and Catherine, where we believe there's nothing better than a hot coffee and an awesome book. Join us for our virtual book club, where we take one book a month and dive into all of the drama, adventure, and romance we can find. Hey, Kristen.
Hi, Catherine.
So this week/month, we are starting a new book. And generally, when we start a new book, we just talk about reading it.
Yes.
But this one's a bit more fun.
I mean, fun for some of us.
Yeah. Well, it was a fun event to have a day off and go to the mall and wait for it to open. And there was
one other set of people there.
Yeah. Waiting for the store to open, and then the person that owned the store was like, I thought about doing a midnight release, but we didn't get enough books. And I'm like, we would have been here.
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know, we live in a major city of a
minor
province. So our capital city is actually quite small. Our province has around 500,000 people in it total. Capital city is probably 60-ish to 70% of that population. So while, yes, we're a capital city, we generally don't get the benefits of all the cool stuff coming our way.
Yeah.
So when this book came out, if you didn't know by the title, we are reading Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros, which is the second book in the Empyrean series, first book being Fourth Wing. Mm-hmm. So I read Fourth Wing, got obsessed with it, told Catherine she had to read it. She did, also loved it, and then we decided it would be a really fun event for the both of us to take the day off work, go to the bookstore, get it as soon as it opened, and then we literally just hung out all day reading. We went to Starbucks and read, then at lunchtime, we literally stayed there till lunch, then we went to a restaurant and got lunch and read, then did we do anything after that, or did we just stay at the restaurant all day?
I think we might have just stayed at the restaurant for the rest of the afternoon and just had a drink, and it took up the rest of because it was a Tuesday or some shit, so it was very non-busy times between 1 and 3 or whatever the times after lunch were. Yeah. I don't know if I'm gonna take a day off for the next book. You know what I mean?
So I've talked about it several times that I have not yet finished this book.
Mm-hmm.
And to be fair, I sort of found it a bit draggy in the back third. I just got a little bit, I don't want to say bored because I feel like that's doing a disservice to the book, but I was just sort of I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess I wasn't intrigued with where the book was going.
Yeah.
And then I didn't get any spoilers or anything. Now I do, because the book's been out for almost a year. But, I didn't, it's not that I got spoilers, but people were posting in all these in all these, book groups that I'm in, that, that the ending killed them, and that, they're absolutely destroyed, and they didn't know what they were gonna do, and all this stuff. And that really got me nervous, because if you are a listener that has listened in the past, you might know that I don't like endings that are not happy.
Yeah.
I like everything to be tied in a neat little bow, and I like my happy endings. So I started to get concerned that I would not be satisfied with the ending.
Yeah.
So I just put it down. And I didn't pick it back up.
Yeah.
So, I'm picking it back up now. And I'm still concerned. But I'm also mostly concerned because Rebecca Yarros has come out and said that this is a 5-book series. This is book 2. Like, what are we getting into? Like, if book 2 is already something and people are like destroyed from book 2,
yeah,
how are they going to feel after book 4, book 5? Like,
I know.
And she has a habit. Like, she is one of those authors that doesn't typically write happy endings.
Yeah.
Right? Like, a lot of her, not like her fiction work, some of it doesn't really end super happily, so I'm concerned.
Yes.
I'm apprehensive.
Majorly concerned.
So.
Yeah, so I did read it, and I think I finished it all in the one day. And by all in the one day, I mean literally started when we got it at, what, 9:30 or something? Yeah. But didn't finish it until like 3 a.m. I was in bed, and Jeff rolled over, saw me crying, and he was like, "Is it the book?" And I was like, "It's the book." And he just rolled back over and went to sleep, which is completely fair. I'm just impressed that he actually was like, "Is this something else? Because I'll help if it's something else." But it's 3 a.m. What the fuck? So I did finish it. It did make me cry. I haven't wanted to reread it. And I don't think it's just the ending, because there are a lot of parts in it that frustrate me. A lot of tropes that I'm not a huge fan of. So it'll be interesting to get into those this time and actually like talk about them, because there was a lot of moments where like something would come up and I'd be like, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
And I know it's the second of 5 books, and like that's why I'm like, what the fuck is the third one gonna be? You know, yeah. I'm worried. But I guess the first book is still like amazing in my eyes, and I can just reread that one for all my love of Xaden and Violet and not have to worry as much about the other ones if they go downhill. So that's where I am now.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll go ahead and get into it. So just a heads up, this is not a spoiler-free zone, and things might get saucy. They won't for my section.
Yeah.
So we are starting this month again. It's Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. And this week we are reading chapters 1 to 12. So, like any, or I guess the way Fourth Wing started is there was a weird like little excerpt at the beginning of every chapter from some sort of historical record, be that a textbook from school, some sort of like autobiography, some sort of retelling of events, usually some sort of like hint to be helpful for the upcoming chapter, for the characters. I do find that in this book, they sort of got a little more obvious, I want to say.
Yeah. Although some of the ones in the other book were pretty obvious. And it's funny because Jeff also just read these 2 books, Fourth Wing and Iron Flame, and he was like, do I have to read that little thing at the beginning of the chapter? And my niece was there, and she was like, you're not reading it? And she was so mad. But it's just funny.
Yeah.
And like, it gives you a hint about what's about to happen. Like,
yeah. But, you know, I guess I like a little bit of mystery about it instead of it blatantly being like, I'm going to talk about this in this little blurb, and then, oh, that chapter is going to be about that exact thing.
Yeah. I feel like there's still a few that have the mystery. Because there is ones that are like, later on her mother asks someone to find something, and we don't really get into it in the chapter, but it is a heading, and you're like, wait, what?
Right.
So, but it's all obviously really pushing towards the plot, and I do feel like, yeah, in the first one it was more like, dragons do this.
Yeah.
It was more, but I think that was also more of a, like, introducing you into the world and trying to give you more information. So I do understand it, but yeah, I do get what you're saying about the, like, it's not as much of a mystery.
Yeah. Okay, so starting with chapter 1, the very first little blurb is a public notice that says, in the 628th year of unification, Eritrea, I'm going to say Eritrea, because
Sure.
I find, if I say it the other way, it reminds me too much of the country of Eritrea, and I would get confused. So I'm going to say Eritrea. Was burned by dragon in accordance with the treaty ending the separatist movement. Those who fled survived, and those who didn't remained entombed in the ruins.
Hey.
So it's just our little reminder of what happened in Fourth Wing. We have this, I guess, unified country, and a few years prior, one of our main characters, Xaden, his dad led an uprising to try and rebel, and that failed, leading all of the adults involved to be murdered or executed, whatever you want to say, and all of the children to get rebel marks on them to show that their parents were traitors, I guess. Eritrea is the name of the city of the location that was trying to separate, right? So we come to, at the very end of Fourth Wing, Violet is injured very seriously and is dying, and Xaden makes the executive decision to take her to see somebody that she didn't realize was alive, and it was her brother. Her brother she thought had been dead for 6 years. So he is a mender, meaning he can heal. He's better than a healer. Mm-hmm. So Xaden took her to see him, to be healed by him, mended by him. So we come to Violet already awake. Like, it doesn't pick up exactly 100% where Fourth Wing left off. I think there's probably a few days in between.
Yeah.
But she is awake after her brush with death. And she is sitting at a dining room table, kitchen table, I guess, staring across it at her brother, Brennan. And she just thinks that it's really crazy that he's alive and well, and that Venin are real. So Venin are, like, sort of the bad guys of the story, but she thought they were a fairy tale.
Yeah. Which how far into, like, our conspiracy theories are we going during this? Because I'm like, I feel like her father only told her about them because he knew they were real and he wanted her to be prepared. So it's like...
But I think they are very typically told in fairy tale format, because, like, didn't Rhiannon say at one point that, like, someone told her about them to, like, warn her to be good when she's a little girl, like, to go to bed on time and stuff, or else the Venin will get her.
Yeah, but I think most people hadn't actually, like, I think Rhiannon had, but I don't think most people had, because her friend, like, is it Jasmine that's in the library? She asked her for information, and she was like, she had to spell out the word wyvern because there's not a sign for it, and she was like, I don't know what you're talking about. So, like, I feel like it's only in certain families that know about it. I feel like it's not, like, a widespread, which, like, is common in Newfoundland, too, of, like, stories in certain places, so maybe everything's true.
Yeah, could be. So I guess her brother is trying to get her to eat, and Tairn, her dragon, pipes in and just says, like, yeah, you do need to eat. And she just, like, checks in on him, checks in on her bond with Andarna, who is sleeping. But at the end of Fourth Wing, there was this battle that was really significant, and Violet had to use Andarna's power which is really dangerous. It could kill her. Well, kill Andarna if she uses too much. So she used so much power that it's normal for Andarna to be sleeping.
Yeah.
She's recovering.
Because she's also a baby.
Yes. So Brennan tells her, like, just comes out and is just like, by the way, you're welcome for healing you. And he's like, consider it your birthday present. So she slept through her 21st birthday, it seems. And it's just sort of like, he's being a bit of a dick.
100%. I just don't know why he needs to be a dick.
Yeah, because I'm like, I understand why, like, I could understand him making a case for why he had to leave, why he joined the other side, why he faked his death. I could forgive all of that. But, like, your sister literally thought you were dead for 6 years, and now you're like, by the way, you're welcome for mending you. And it's like, wouldn't you consider that just due because you lied to her for 6 years?
Yeah, 100%.
Like, wouldn't it be like, it's my pleasure for saving you, considering what I've put you through?
Mm-hmm.
However, nope.
Yeah.
Not him. So somebody comes in and calls him Lieutenant Colonel, which is, I guess, a decently high up rank. I don't know. I don't know the rankings of, like, at all. Cadet, Lieutenant.
Well, Cadet is the bottom because later this week they call the first years cadets, so that's the only reason I know.
Yeah. Sardine.
Sardine? Is that what it is?
No, it's just what, for some reason.
Were you talking about Sergeant and you said Sardine?
No, I was thinking, I don't know why, but I said Lieutenant, I said Cadet, and all of a sudden the next thing in my mind, I was like, oh, Sardine, next logical one.
I'm gonna choke on that. Not Sardine. Oh, Jesus. Amazing. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's just how my mind works.
I liked it a lot.
I'm not in this story.
What? It's not a reader insert?
So, some guy comes in and essentially calls him and says, you're needed you need to have a meeting with the assembly. So he just says, like, hang out here, I'll meet you in 30 minutes and I'll take you to see your dragons. So, she does not listen to her brother when he says, wait here. Obviously not. Why would you?
Yeah.
She goes to explore the house. Like, she's in a huge house. And it's, like, made up of stone, and she just describes it as being impenetrable. And I feel like it's, like, built into a cave. Maybe?
Possibly.
It seems like it's, like, hidden.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So, the fact that it's impenetrable, made of stone, sort of hidden, that's what saved them 6 years ago. So she is in Eratea, like that's where they are. And she says that, like, oh, it didn't actually get destroyed by Dragonfire after all. So, yay.
Yeah, but it just feels like at some point somebody on the, like, other side would have flown over and realized this.
You would think.
So
like,
that's why
100% you would think. I don't understand it at all.
That's why I agree with you. I feel like there has to be something else.
Hiddenish.
Yeah, it has to be, like, in a mountain or, I don't know. I can't remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, you are correct.
But I guess she explains that, so the fact that it's huge and impenetrable saved them from the Dragonfire. And the fact that there's more than 3 of them present with a rebel mark makes it so General Melgrin, who is, I guess, the ruler of the country.
Not of the country.
No. He's the general. He's the, like, he's the second in command, maybe the third in command.
Yeah.
He can't see them with his seeing into the future power. Because more than 3 rebels together just blinds him for some reason.
Which is, like,
so
pretty convenient.
It is pretty convenient, but also that means that they've been able to hide in plain sight and rebuild. So, like, I sort of was thinking the same thing as you. I'm like, so they're rebuilding just, like, loosey-goosey in the area. Like, anybody could fly over and see them and be like, well, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm like, no one's going to question them on it. It just seems a little suspect.
Yep.
Anyway, she walks by the room where the assembly is meeting and actually sees Imogen and Bodhi standing like outside of it and like listen in. And Imogen's like, come on over. So they all start to listen in. The door is open, ajar, so they can very easily hear. So there's a few adults there, including a guy with an eye patch. And Brennan and Xaden are also there. And Violet has a moment of thinking about like how hot he is, because I think he's sitting on like a throne-ish style chair. Like he's sitting in a chair of significance.
Yes.
So she's like, "Whoo," getting all hot and heavy. But then she's like, "Nope, I need to shut that down. I can't think of him that way." Like, she's worried that she'll sort of let herself have feelings for him when she has realized she can't trust him. And he won't tell her things. So she doesn't want a relationship like that. Yeah. So Bodhi tells Violet that this is an assembly meeting. And they only need 5 people present to call a vote. I think, like, I'm not 100% sure, but I think the way they made it seem was that there's only 7 of them total on the council, like on the assembly.
That would make sense, yeah.
Yeah, and 4 votes carry a motion. Mm-hmm. So they only need 4 votes out of 7, which is pretty good. The assembly meetings are also always open to whoever wants to listen, which is why the door is open. So they're talking about several things, and like they go into it, but I'm not doing that. They talk about how their forge is broken and they need a new luminary, which I don't know what that is. And they're trying to barter with like a Viscount for it, but his asking price is too high. And there's, from what I gathered, a sort of an assumption that maybe the cost is not monetary.
Mm-hmm. And
like,
the person who's against it is Xaden more so than anyone else.
Yeah. So
also, I think a luminary is a plot device.
Oh, okay. Wonderful. So my assumption is that his cost that's too high is like marrying Xaden off to like somebody.
Oh, okay.
So that's my general assumption. Because he's protesting.
Are you just like really good at this, or do you just not remember?
I don't remember.
Okay, cool. No. Just curious. I was like, are you reading this like you're reading it with new eyes, or do you not remember this person?
No, I am reading this with new eyes. Like I don't remember very much.
Okay, fair.
So they also discuss. Oh, right. So the Viscount's cost, his price is too high. And she thinks that that's news to Violet. Like, she has no idea who they're talking about, this Viscount. Because their country of Navarre sounds better.
Yeah.
It doesn't have aristocracy, even though it has a king. So no one else is allowed to have a title. So she wonders where this person is.
Yeah.
They're obviously not bartering with someone from their country. And then they manage to circle back. I guess Brennan's like, we need to stick to the topic. And they finally come around to it that the cadets need to return to school, aka them.
Yeah.
Some of the adults don't want them to go, and some of them want most of them to go, but they want Xaden to stay. So obviously Xaden is sort of in a position of power here. And there's just a little bit of controversy over whether they should go back to school or not. So again, referencing the last book, they were sent on sort of the final mission before graduation, which was the War Games. And they were given an order to to stand guard at this, like, station called Athabine. And when they got there, it was completely deserted. And there was a letter left behind saying you can either head to the real War Games spot where they're actually happening, or you could save this nearby town that is being attacked by Venin and their wyvern.
Yeah.
So I was
absolutely wild for somebody to, like, leave a town defenseless and be like,
yeah,
who cares?
Yeah.
It'll at least kill these kids that are meddling. It's like, what? What is happening?
It's like Scooby-Doo.
Right?
Anyway, so I guess they're nervous about going back to school because they didn't go to the War Games location. They stayed and they battled the Venin, which is how Violet got hurt. So there's some, I don't want to call it controversy, but I guess they're nervous that when they go back, they're going to be killed and labeled as traitors.
Yeah, well, it depends who's in on this whole scheme. If it's just one person, they could lie their way out of it. But if it's like everybody at the school, they'll immediately be killed. And we also have to remember, they don't really care about killing kids. And by kids, I mean, I know they're 21, but still. They're in
Young
university
people.
and shit. They don't care about killing any of them. So they just would.
Yeah. So I guess there's controversy over whether they should stay or go. So Xaden just tells the assembly that the choice of staying or going is up to the students themselves. Not them. And then he sort of gestures to the door to indicate that they're all listening. And one of the adults then gets pissy. Her name is Suri, because she doesn't trust Violet at all and is pissed that Xaden knew she was out there listening in on the conversation and let her hear. And then a couple of them are thinking, like, why is Violet walking around like she's free here? She's not. She should be in our prison.
Yeah.
Because she can spill our secrets. And, like, all of this is just based on the fact that Dain, her best friend, touched her cheek and stole her memories, like, stole from her mind. So now they're like, Violet can't be trusted because Dain could get close to you again. And I'm like, if some dude tried to touch my face, or not tried, if he did touch my face, and I, and read my mind, do you really think that I would let him anywhere near me again?
Yeah. And
they're assuming that Dain and Violet are still best friends, but, like, she is not gonna forgive him.
No. And it's like, that's a violation of so many more things than just, like, yes, this is a giant secret, but it's also, like, every part of, like, she thought she was in love with him at one point. Like, he stole those memories. Like, I would just be like, don't touch me because, like, oh, God, yeah.
Yeah, but, like, they're very much like, oh, if Ados gets close to her again, he'll take on more of her thoughts. And it's like, why on earth would you think she would be okay with that?
Yeah.
Then something odd comes up. There is a discussion of a quote-unquote brutal custom that Xaden says he did to take responsibility for Violet. But they don't say what it is. Just that he did it.
Yeah.
And, like, I don't remember if it comes up in this book. Like, in my head and in my heart, I would love it to be he forced marriage upon her while she was knocked unconscious. Like, in my heart, that's what it is.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's actually what it is, but that's what I want it to be.
So she can never leave him, even though, like, we're like, consent?
But consent to marriage, I believe, is different than consent to physical things.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. And, like, I also don't know what this world is like in the, like, what does it even mean to be married? Does it matter?
Yeah.
You know, because, like, going into a dragon college, you're not expecting to live long. Does it even matter if you get married?
Yeah, I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, I guess the other people there talk about her loyalty some more. And I guess somebody, I don't remember if it's Brennan or if it's Xaden, it must be Brennan, points out that, like, he has, you know, he's loyal. He's from the same family as she is. Mm-hmm. But they just say, like, you've proven your loyalty. Like, you faked your death. You cut yourself off from there. You've been fighting for us for years. So, like, in their eyes, Brennan has proven himself. Violet has not. And she just gets pissy that they are talking about her like she isn't there.
Yeah.
So she valid point. So she just says, she was like, excuse me, I haven't proven my loyalty. She was like, I literally defended your citizens and I kept Xaden's secrets. So, like, I should be trusted. Mm-hmm. And then they sort of mentioned the whole mind reading thing with Dain and how if she goes back, he'll be her enemy and try to kill her. And I'm like, he will? Is that, like, that's not what I took from it, but okay, sure. But that's the end of the...
That is, like, I guess, I didn't take that from it either, but that's exactly what the actual bad person is thinking in the book. Is their enemy and trying to, like, kill them. They're like, a secret can be kept if the other one's dead, like, whatever.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, I didn't think that he'd try to kill her either. Yeah.
So, we go to the next chapter. It's a field guide of dragonkind as our little blurb. It just mentions that in the valley above Ryerson House, which is Xaden's home, it's heated by thermal energy, which is an asset because that was the hatching ground for the Dubmadin line, which two of the greatest dragons of their generation were hatched from, which is Tern and Coda, which is General Melgren's dragon, Coda. So, I feel like that's an insinuation that they can use this ground as a new hatching ground.
Yeah, I think that's an Easter egg kind of thing.
So everyone leaves the meeting and Xaden just tells her, like, stay, talk to your brother. So everyone else sort of gives them privacy. And in my head, I'm like, she just had a talk with her brother. Why does she need to talk to him again? But it's fine. It's fine. So they have a chat. But, like, I sort of phrased it, it's more like a reckoning. Because, like, she's pissed that he's been here for 6 years. And she asks what happened when he was supposed to have died. So he tells her the story. He tells her that Nowlin, who is Tern's former rider, gave everything he had to mend Brennan. And when he woke, other dragons came and sheltered him and his dragon Marb in nearby caves. He also tells her the reason he's here is because he hates the idea of being safe behind the wards when innocent people are dying. And he couldn't go home and look his mother in the eye knowing that she and the rest of the people, the rest of sort of the government, have lied to everyone. Yeah. And, like, I get it. Yeah. So, then they discuss venin. He tells her that there are 2 types of wyvern. One that breathes blue fire and one that breathes green fire. And the green fire one is faster. But they have no idea how they're born. And they're sort of assuming that it's the same process as dragons. But Violet remembers her dad's stories and remembers that wyverns aren't born, they're made. And she reminds Brennan of that. And he's like, oh my god, you really think so?
How do you remember that from the stories?
Yeah. Anyway, and then he shows her this, like, ridiculous chart showing, like, the frequency of attacks have been increasing at an alarming rate, and he thinks they have about 6 months before the Venin try to take Navarre and Basgiath. I feel like it's just such an arbitrary number.
But it's also, like, I don't really understand what the people of Navarre really think. Like, the ones that know about the Venin and stuff, like, do they just think that they're gonna be safe and just let everyone else die? Like, I just don't really understand their plan.
Yeah, I don't really know.
It's confusing.
Very. So he also sort of let slip that when they went to Resin, which was the town her and her friends battled in, they were looking for something called a lure, but we don't know what that is. But the box got destroyed, so they couldn't really study it to know what it's about. And Violet sort of, I guess, mentions that, like, they're reorganizing, which is scary. And, like, Violet sort of confirms, like, yeah, the one who stabbed me called, like, the other one Sage. So she's like, they're definitely teaching each other, which Brennan is like, oh no, they're teaching each other. So she then tells him that, like, he isn't safe here. So, like, you need to get somewhere safe. Mm-hmm. But all he says is that, like, Aratea has a dormant ward stone, but he can't get close enough to figure it out. So ward stone is like a big stone that sends a barrier around the country / neighboring cities. And it's like a big dome and the Venin can't get in. Mm-hmm. However, the ward stone is dormant and no one knows how to use it. So, yeah, he can't figure it out. Yeah. Violet, however, thinks that the info, in order to activate it, must be hidden in the archives. Because she was like, being able to activate a ward stone is way too, what's the word? It's information too important to not record somewhere.
Yeah. Even if you're trying to hide shit.
Yeah. So she thinks that in order to keep the rebellion alive, they have to get the information and reactivate the ward stone to give this area a ward that repels the Venin. So I guess in all this conversation, Brennan decides, like, oh, I probably shouldn't be talking to you about stuff. Because what if Dain gets to you? You're a liability. And all she thinks of is that he sounds like Xaden. And, like, I see what she's saying. Like, can you imagine just constantly being told day in and day out that I can't tell you things. I don't trust you. Not because of you, but because of, like, magic. You know what I mean? It's just like, I would be exhausted if I were her.
Yeah.
So she does realize that she's a liability. Like, she knows that. And then she's like, well, if Dain reads my mind and sees all of this, like this town, the house, any of that, like, everything will be lost.
Yeah.
So she decides, like, I need to leave, go back to Basgiath, just that I'm not even around you guys anymore and I can't hear your plans because that would make her a liability. Now, Brennan doesn't entirely agree with her going back, even though he just said she was a liability, but he doesn't think she should go back. But it's not his decision. So after they've had their little chat, they go out to meet up with the dragons so that Violet can check in on Tarn and Andarna. So when they get there, like, I guess they're in, like, a little valley. And Darna is sleeping under a tree. However, she has almost doubled in size, and her scales are now sort of black, purpley, iridescent color. Which sounds so cool.
Yeah.
So I guess Violet figures out that because she used so much power in Resin, it accelerated her growth process and makes Andarna a teenager. A really, like, bitchy one, too.
Yep, very.
So then she tells, I guess, like, Xaden and all of the others are there, too, I guess, to discuss some things. So they just say that, like, they came from the academy and they have to go back because if they don't, they'll kill every last student with a rebellion mark. And Xaden agrees. And I don't know if they would do it right out. They'd probably do it subtly, though.
Yeah. I think that, like, the whole fact that they are forcing the children with the marks to go to the dragon school is them hoping that they'll all just die statistically.
Yeah.
And the most of the reason that they don't is because Xaden actually is trying to protect them.
Yeah. So Xaden agrees with Violet that they should go back. Brennan thinks that she's going to be killed, but she assures him that, like, no, if our mother is there, she will not let me be killed, at least without evidence.
Yeah.
Which I found really funny. Like, oh, as long as there's evidence.
Yeah.
A couple of the students agree that her mom wasn't there when the orders were handed out to play in the war games this year. So, like, she had nothing to do with sending them to Athabine. And in addition to that, what's his face? General Ados, Dain's dad, was in charge of planning the games.
Yeah.
So they think that while General Soaringale is complicit, they don't think that she will allow them to be killed without just cause.
Yeah. Like, they think that she knows about the venom and shit, but they kind of don't think that she knows about this plan that...
No.
Yeah.
So Violet, like, Brennan is, like, concerned, but Violet just says, like, her mother is not going to let her kill without evidence. Oh no, I already said that. So in the end, they decide that they're going to go and that Xaden will train Violet to keep shielding Dain out so that if he tries to touch her face again, he gets nothing. So, they're also, like, talking about a strategy to keep Dain away from her in general. And Xaden just says, like, don't worry, I'll hit him in his pride and he will stay away from you. And she's just like, can I, like, take time to figure it out, please?
Yeah.
So they just decide to go back as soon as Andarna wakes up. But they obviously have to be quick. And they have to be back in 48 hours for graduation. So, according to the Guide to the Rider's Quadrant, graduation is anticlimactic. Apparently the other quadrants can party harder. So, they're all approaching Basgiath, and as they're flying, and Taryn is, like, apologizing, Violet thinks that she sort of feels, like, betrayed by him, but really by all of them.
Yeah.
Right? Like, Taryn, Scale, even Andarna. Like,
yeah.
She even mentioned, she's like, you know.
Which, fair.
Yeah. Like, literally everybody kept this a secret. But, like, she sort of can justify it for everybody else. right? Because she was like, well, I can justify it for Scale. She has no loyalty to me. And even earlier, she mentioned that, like, Scale doesn't like anybody except for Xaden. So, like, she can justify Scale not telling her. And then she was like, and Taryn has more loyalty to Scale as her mates,
yeah,
than his rider. And Andarna is a kid and just along for the ride.
Yeah.
But she was like, Xaden has no excuse as to why he couldn't tell me.
Yeah.
So,
which I don't think, like, this is terrible logic. Just gotta say.
And, like, we're gonna get a little bit deeper into it, so I don't 100% want to, like, lay all my frustrations out right now.
Yeah.
But I just want to kind of give her a little, like, love tap and be like, girl, like, you need to get over it.
Yeah.
And we'll get into it a little bit more. Don't hate me on sight.
Yeah, there's a lot, I guess. So we'll get into all of it.
Yeah, momentarily.
But there's also, this is like the second, and there's 5 books total.
Yeah.
So obviously we need to have some miscommunication.
But it's the same miscommunication every time.
I know.
We're not running into different problems here.
No, I know.
Okay. But, like, it's just funny because, like, Taryn is, like, apologizing and being like, I'll do my best to answer your questions now. And she just doesn't ask any.
But she didn't really ask Xaden many either. Like,
oh, when he said, like, I want you to know everything about me.
Just ask me.
Yeah.
Or even about, like, what's going on.
Yeah.
Like, so, not that, like, I guess it takes time to, like, get your thoughts together. But you'd think she'd have some more questions.
I'd have a mental list.
Yeah.
But I guess that's me. Anyway, so yeah, so, like, she just doesn't ask him any questions, and then they land. And, like, everyone is really worried that they're gonna walk in on, like, a trial or an immediate execution, and Taryn still has to drop Andarna off in the Vale so that she can sleep. So, like, and she's being saucy because she's a teenager. So, it's just a very tense situation. So, like, her and Xaden sort of, like, stop and have a very small conversation. And, like, she insinuates that she is mad at him. But she also, he's like, you trust me though, right? And she's like, yeah, with my life. In other words, like, that's the only way. She trusts with her life because she knows that if she dies, so does he. So, like,
yeah,
it's sort of like a dig almost, is what I take it as. Like, she's digging at him. Like, I trust you with my life because you care about your own.
Yeah.
So, yeah. She also tells him to let her have a chance to keep Dain away before, like, he mentioned something about, like, using Dain's pride against him. So he's just saying, like, she's like, just let me do what I can first before you do what you feel that you need to do. So the plan is to just walk in, because, like, right now the graduation ceremony is happening. So they're just going to walk in.
Yeah.
So.
Why not?
Yeah. So they separate and they head to their different dorms just to, like, get their stuff, do what they have to do. We don't really find out what they had to do.
Yes, we do.
We do?
What? Well, what? Violet?
No, I know. Yes, I know what they have to do, but not what, like, Bodhi and Imogen and all them scatter for.
Oh, because they're warning all of the other relic owners.
Oh, okay.
Because, like, if everybody knows and turns on them, then they assume that all of the relic havers are bad and they'll all get murdered. So they're like, get ready to fly away.
Right. So, Violet and Xaden encounter, like, some students on the way, and no one seems to really know anything. which is good.
Yeah.
So they go to Liam's room and they grab the letters from under his mattress because, again, he was a first year. He wasn't allowed to send and receive letters, but I think he was still writing them. So they wanted to take them for his family.
Specifically, yeah, his sister.
Yeah. So they grab the letters from under his mattress and they head back out and they run into Rhiannon and Riddick. I'm not gonna lie, I totally forgot Rhiannon existed.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Rhiannon's her best friend.
I know. She showed up and I was like, oh yeah, her.
She has a friend. Okay.
But like, now that she's been named, I do remember her subsequently. Yeah. I just like forgot she existed for a moment. Anyway, so Rhiannon and Riddick totally thought that they were dead or lost, but like obviously they're really glad that they aren't. And she asks Rhiannon to do something for her. And Xaden initially is like, don't do it. But she's like, they're trustworthy people. Like right in front of them. It's like they're having a side conversation, like right in their presence about them.
Yeah.
It's really bizarre.
But I think everybody has those because everyone's constantly talking to like their dragon. So it's like not as odd.
I didn't think it was in their head though. I thought it was verbal.
No. What?
Like, I thought they said out loud, like him saying don't and her saying they can be trusted. Like, I thought they said this, like, verbally, and I thought that was really awkward.
Maybe because she's, like, gonna give them the letters, so there's a reason. Yeah, I guess I didn't read this too closely, but I just assumed it was in the head.
So she asks Rhiannon to hide Liam's letters and not let them get burned. Saying that makes Rhiannon and Riddick understand that Liam is dead.
Yeah.
So they part ways then, because they have to get ready for graduation. I don't understand why Rhiannon and Riddick aren't at graduation right now. They're just in the halls.
I guess everyone's on their way. I don't know. They came out of one room together, too. I was like, ooh.
So, they part ways, and she asks Xaden how he does it. And he's like, what do you mean? She's like, how do you lie to people that you love? And, like, she's saying in the moment, she's like, I'm honestly not, like, this is not me trying to be cruel or, like, sarcastic or anything like that. I'm being sincere. Like, I genuinely, no dig, want to know how you do it. And part of me is like, it's a little bit of a dig.
Well, yeah. A tiny bit.
But his response is that, one, he's never lied to her. He's just selective about truths.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that's one way to put it.
Yeah.
But he also said that, like, that is sort of the way to go about it. Like, try not to lie. Just try to tell the truth as best you can and leave out things. Yeah. And then she asked how long he knew about Brennan, aka how long he's known Brennan has been alive. And he tells her straight up, he's known about it since Brennan died, which is 6 years ago. So, you know, she's on one hand shocked that he's known that long, and on the other hand shocked that he actually told her the truth. Yeah. Like, he straight up answered the question truthfully without any pretense. And he's just like, you're shocked? And she's like, well, yeah. He said, well, I told you I would always tell you the truth if you ask questions about me.
Yeah.
And he was like, I just, like, there are things I know you don't want to hear. And her response is like, she will always prefer the truth. And that she doesn't run from it no matter the cost.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, but it did. But she did. Of course.
Well, yeah.
Once she figured out the truth, like, she did. She got pissed.
You mean in the last book?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
She was real pissed.
Yeah. But that was before they had this conversation, I guess.
And he just says, like, it cost him her, aka, like, the truth did cost him her. So, like, it did cost something. And that he knows it was the not telling her that ruined them. But then he says, like, when a lot of lives depend on him keeping secrets, it's hard for him to recognize the difference. And, like, this entire conversation, I feel, is so... I want to say unnecessary. I know it's necessary for plot device reasons. We need a conflict. We can't have a happy main couple, like, right off the hop.
Yeah.
And
I don't know why, though.
I don't either.
The end of the book is going to tear them apart in some way anyway.
Yeah. But...
Why can't they be happy in the middle?
So I guess, like, this is my issue, is... He is telling her, like, lives depend on him keeping certain secrets.
Yeah.
Like, and that is a heavy burden for a 23-year-old.
Yeah.
So, like, I just feel like she is being unfair.
Well, 100%. Like, her mother could have everybody killed. Like, it's not unreasonable for him to be wary.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think at some point he probably should have said something, but, like, when do you say it? When do you decide that somebody is trustworthy? Like, it's such a hard situation. And he tried to keep her at arm's length in the first book because he didn't want to get into this situation. And obviously that didn't work because they're meant to be. But it's just like, But
also, it's not like... I just don't feel it's fair for her to be angry because their relationship was all of, like, 2 weeks.
I know, but also, I think the main reason, which I think she kind of loses the plot a bit, but the main reason I would be pissed would be, like, I talked about grieving my brother to you, and you empathized with me, and you knew all along that it was a lie.
Yeah.
But, like, yeah, they were only together 2 weeks or whatever, but they were so in love, Kristen.
But I don't care how in love you are. Like, I don't know, like, I just feel like she is not entitled to every single secret that he possesses at this point. Like, they hated each other. Well, she hated him for the first, 2 to 3 months of her first year.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know, man. It just, like, I feel like she's expecting a lot. And I don't think it's fair.
I think she's expecting a lot, but I'm not mad that she's upset about what happened. I'm fine with that part. I'm fine with her being upset with how it went. I don't agree with her being like, I want to know the entire truth. And him being like, I can't tell you everything. And her being like, unacceptable. He's fucking, like, leading a war here. Mm-hmm. He can't, like, people are married to people that can't tell them what they do for their job. That's a thing. You can't. It's the same thing here. Like, if you want to be in a relationship with him, he can never tell you everything.
Yeah. And
that's the way it is.
I think that's valid.
Yeah.
And, like, I also don't think it's required to air every single dirty secret that you've ever had. Like, even if what your person does for a living isn't, like, secretive. Like, so what if I have, like, this random, like, fantasy about me and, like, Chris Hemsworth? I gotta tell Sid. I have to tell my husband about it. Because, I don't want to keep a secret. Like, fuck that.
I know.
You know what I mean? Like, we're all allowed to have secrets.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yes. I didn't know where you were going with this. I was like, is she asking him for, like, his secret celebrity hall pass crushes? Like, what is...
Anyway.
Okay, I get you.
Sorry. Anyway. So, their conversation continues, and she insinuates that, like, maybe their relationship can keep going if he, like, since he did promise to tell her everything after she learns how to shield. Because in her mind, that is now the barrier. That's why she can't know things, because she's a liability. However, he just says he would tell her everything about him.
Which is fair. I think that's fair. Yes. I'm like, yeah, makes sense. You can't know top secret information about a war. And I don't, like, this whole, them being like, you need to know how to shield yourself before we tell you stuff. There's still stuff that she shouldn't know about a war. Like, she's not high up on their decision-making, whatever you call it, levels, ranking, whatever it is. She's at the very bottom, and he's at the very top. So, like, she can't know everything he knows. Mm-hmm. That part annoys me so much.
Yeah.
It's just logic.
But, so she's annoyed that he did that clarification. Because in her head, that's not the promise he made. Yeah. But he does tell her that he wants her to know everything about him. And he does say, like, you're not asking the right questions. Which I think is valid.
But I also think this is a bit much, too. I'm like...
Be a little open and trustworthy. Like, yeah. You can be a little open with her just to sort of placate her a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think, like, she needs to know how to ask him about himself. Like, that's not even how like, you don't just grill a person when they're falling for them. You have conversations, and, like, it just, you know what I mean? I feel like, I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Everyone's pissing me off, and that's, I guess, the point. Yeah.
Well, so then he just continues and says, like, she didn't fall for just anyone. She fell for the leader of a revolution, so he'll always have secrets. So just what you said. Yeah. But, like, him saying that really, really pisses her off. Because for her, her whole life and education has been a lie. Like, she's been lied to about what the war is, what's going on. And she wants total honesty. And she
can't have it.
Can't have it. So she tells him that their relationship won't work for her, and she can't trust him without full disclosure. And he's like, what does that mean? And she's like, well, that means if you can't comply and, like, can't give me full disclosure, then I'll start unfalling for you. And his response was not at all, like, I guess if you know the character, it's absolutely what the character would say, but it's not at all what I expected.
Yeah.
He's just like, good luck. I tried for 5 months and it didn't work. So he legit tried to stay away from her for 5 months and just eventually was like, I can't.
Yeah.
So he's like, you won't be able to unfall for me at all. And then he even says, like, oh, this will be good for our relationship. Like, this space will be good for us. I'm like, I beg your pardon? Anyway, so then they get interrupted by Bodhi, and they all get ready to enter formation, just as their names are being called for the missing/dead list.
Of course.
Yeah. They have to make an entrance and make it dramatic. So next chapter, our little blurb is from the Field Guide to Dragonkind. And it says only 4 things are known about a dragon's dreamless sleep, which is what Andarna is doing. Apparently it's critical for rapid development. The duration varies from breed to breed. It is dreamless, and they wake up hungry. Dun dun dun.
I love it.
So obviously they're walking in to the graduation ceremony, and everybody else is like in formation listening to their names being called as dead people. Yeah. So they are walking in and everybody is shocked. And they approach the dais. And Captain Fitzgibbons and Violet's mom are both like, why were you guys reported dead if you're here?
Yeah.
And then Dain's dad, Colonel Ados, says, well, then maybe they should have been labeled for desertion. And, like, he's furious because obviously his plan didn't work. They are still alive.
Yeah.
So the story that they tell is that they were sent to Athabine for the war games. Not a lie. Where they were attacked by griffins. And apparently that's how they're saying Soleil and Liam died, from the Griffin attack. After which Violet was stabbed by a poison blade. So Xaden they said that this all happened at the watering clearing place, like, where they met the Griffin riders, during the first book. They said this is where the fight happened, and Xaden said then he took an injured Violet to Athebyne to try and get help, found the missive telling them to either watch over a nearby village or go to Eltival, and in the story, in their story, they raced around looking for a healer to save Violet.
Yeah.
So Colonel Ados is, trying to refute everything they say, and, I think there's, mention of getting, an official way, some official capacity to have the truth, taken from them, extracted, if you will.
Yeah, are we thinking Dain?
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. They have to have other powerful...
Yeah.
It can't just be him.
Anyway, so, he's like, what? That's not true. But Violet's mom then is like, just wait. I'm gonna ask Violet. So
I'm gonna ask my daughter that I hate.
Yeah.
But really.
So she asks Violet, and Violet responds and tells, the same story, and telling selective truths to sort of make it sound real.
Yeah. And, everything she says is true because of the way she words
it.
Which is, smart.
Yep.
It's very fey. But I'm also, it's not that hard to just lie.
It is if you're lying to Judge Judy.
True. Good point.
So then they actually were very smart and took the missive that told in Athebyne said to either go to Eltival or stay and help this village. And her mom actually looked at the note, and she recognized that it was in Colonel Ados's handwriting. So she was like, this was your decision? And she told him he was a moron.
Yeah.
Essentially, because Athebyne is an outpost for soldiers because there's a village nearby and it's outside the ward. So he cleared it of people for the war games, so it was abandoned. There was nobody there to protect the people, and
which is insane.
Yeah, the fact that he was willing to let all those people die is a little wild. But Violet's mom is like, that's unacceptable. And he's like, but you told me I could be in charge this year.
100%. It is wild.
And she's like, not if you're going to be an idiot.
Yeah.
So Violet's mom sort of tells them to get back in formation. However, before they do, Colonel Ados threatens them. And Xaden and Violet sort of counter back with, well, because he's like, you're lying. And they're like, no, we're not. Why would we lie? If we were lying, then, what we're lying about, no, you don't want anyone else to know. So you can't, go around saying that we're lying without telling the truth, which is sort of what they want them to do anyways, to tell the truth and let everyone know what the real villain is. Right? Anyway, so he obviously can't out them for being liars without outing the truth about the venom. So they head back in formation. This is probably my favorite part of the entire book. So Dain approaches Violet, and he's like, oh my god, Violet, I was so worried about you, and steps towards her.
Also a bit embarrassing.
And before he has a chance to get too close, she, like, essentially flips out at him and says, like, if you try to touch me, I'll cut off your hands and, like, and I'll, like, turn them to ash with dragon fire or something like that. Mm-hmm. And he's...
Well, probably with her lightning.
So, yeah. And he's just, like, shocked. He's like, you don't mean that. And it's like, dude, we know what you did. Everyone knows what you did.
Yeah, but did you not, in this moment, immediately think that there's no way he's this good of an actor, and he clearly doesn't actually know what he did?
No. Do you know what I think? I do think, like, but, like, do I think that he knew that his dad was going to set them up to die? No, I don't think he knew that.
Yeah.
However, do I think that he knew that his dad asked him to get her memories, her thoughts, for
information on
information?
Xaden. Yeah, 100%.
100%. Yes. And to me, it doesn't matter. Now, obviously, the fact that she, like, almost died is probably a little bit more significant. But the fact is, he touched her and took her memories without her consent.
Yeah.
To me, the result and what he knew was happening with the information is secondary. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I don't think she's focused enough on that anger. She's really focused on, this is his fault, and, like, I get why. It's so that we can have an arc in the future.
I don't like it.
Yeah.
Dain is like Kale. I hate it.
No, he's not like Kale. He's much worse than Kale.
Is he, though?
Kale didn't mind rape anyone.
No, but he, like, accused her of being, like, a murderer, terrible human, and, like...
Not a murderer, because she is a murderer.
And told everybody, and told her that everything was her fault, when actually it was mostly his.
Yeah. I do think Dain's sins are a bit worse than Kale's.
Fine. Anyway, he is, like, just really flabbergasted at, like, her reaction. He's like, whoa. Like, he was not expecting that. Mm-hmm. And Xaden just reiterates to, like, stay away from Violet. And he's like, or what, are you going to beat me up? And he's like, no, Violet's already taken care of that. I don't have to do. Which is kind of like, it makes you love Xaden more. Because you're like, yeah, he knows.
But it's such a trope.
I know.
Like, I like it a bit, but I'm also like, what a trope.
I know. But I secretly just still like it.
I know. But, like, it's... Like, Reese said the same thing. No, I won't hurt you. She can do it herself. Yeah. Like, I don't know. I'm like, I love a strong woman, but I don't need... I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what I need. I need Dain to realize that she's a strong person, which isn't going to happen. But I don't know. Also, I'd be more worried about her fucking dragon than about Xaden.
Yes. Yeah, that's a great idea. Anyway, so that was sort of... So, I guess Xaden also, like, does do the pride thing, like, hit him where it hurts. By being like, she made her choice, and her choice was me, and, like, sort of insinuating that there was, like, a love triangle thing going on, and she did not choose Dain. And I mean, there kind of was.
Yeah.
So that sort of ends all that. They get through graduation, and the third years then get their orders as lieutenants, Xaden being one of them. Later on, they are at a party. Or no, wait. They're not at the party yet. So I guess Violet notices that of the 11 first years in their squad, at the start, only 5 of them are left. So, like, it's not very many.
No.
Next chapter, our blurb at the beginning is a missive to General Melgren that Major Burton Varish should be reassigned after he after the deaths of 3 prisoners during interrogation. So, like, I wonder where this guy is going to come up.
He's definitely terrible.
Yeah, because he let 3 people die. So they're at the grad party, and they're all talking about what they're excited for, like being second years, because they get perks. So some of them are excited for letters, some are excited to mix with other quadrants, some are excited about going into town. So they're just having like a jolly old time. Xaden mind links and tells Violet that he's getting ready to leave. They go and have a moment, and he teases her about sharing a bed, and she just reminds him that she can't because she doesn't trust him. And then he tells her that he'll earn her trust as soon as she realizes she doesn't need his full disclosure. So, like, he is setting boundaries.
Yeah.
And he also tells her that she isn't the only one that's allowed to set boundaries in their relationship. And I'm in my head like, yes, like, you go.
100%.
Because so often it is the woman dictating, this is what I need to make me feel safe. This is what I need to feel respected. This is what I need to feel blah, 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 right? And I just find that it's nice having a book where it's the guy doing that.
Yeah.
He then tells her, so she's like, he says something and she's like, oh, so you're fighting with me. And he just says, no, I'm fighting for you, which is like real cute.
He's real cute, which like I guess he has to be for us to, you know.
Yeah. So Colonel Ados approaches them and then just sort of drops like to Violet, like says it out loud, even though Xaden already knows, that he has been assigned to the front, aka like he's been assigned to I don't know if you would call it like a base or a village or something that's like right near all the fighting.
On the front line.
Yeah. And then he introduces both Xaden and Violet to the new Vice Commandant, Major Varish. So,
who could it be?
The very guy that we were just talking about. And, like, I didn't get into specifics of what he said, but essentially he's a dick.
Huge.
Yeah. However, the two of them get their own orders, and it's essentially their leave orders. So, the War College has decided that they can have 2 days every 2 weeks to go. Like, so she has leave from school for 2 days every 2 weeks to go and visit him. He also has 2 days every 2 weeks to go and visit her. So really, they're alternating weeks so that they're seeing each other once a week.
It's not for them to see each other.
It's not. No, it's for their dragons to see each other. Them seeing each other is just a nice side bonus for us.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, so like they're pissed because it's his station is so far away that they're gonna spend like half to 3/4 of the day riding. Then they may get half a day to 3/4 of a day together, and then they have to go back in the 2 days. So they're pissed, and then she hears Taryn like roar in frustration, so he's pissed. So yeah, everyone's just pissed.
Yeah, but it's good for them.
Well,
it actually probably is good for.
So then we have another little blurb. It's the guide to the rider's quadrant. So it says that a rider's responsibility is to, they said that like it is to the code of conduct, but more importantly, it is to the codex. And riders sort of make their own rules. So essentially, it doesn't really matter what you do if you break like the code of conduct. It's whatever. But for them, the codex is like law.
Yeah.
So Colonel Ados threatens Violet and threatens her sister Mira if she ever tells anyone what really happened before they, like, left. So, for some reason, Violet feels more trapped than before. Like, trapped into keeping the lie. And I'm just like, wasn't that your plan anyway?
Yeah.
Anyway, so after Ados leaves, her and Xaden go outside. Like, they just go a bit far away and they talk. And they sort of pretend they're having a heartfelt goodbye. But he is mind linking her orders. So she's not talking to him, but he's talking to her.
She's also drunk.
Yes. Oh, yeah. So it was a party, so she's a little intoxicated.
Which is kind of funny.
So he's telling her, don't get involved in rebellion stuff, because Melgrin can watch her. Don't trust other marked ones, because they don't know what their allegiances are yet. Don't, like, send any weird letters, because they're going to be reading all of our letters anyway. So, like, this is what he's mind linking to her. And she's just being drunk. So he just tells her that he'll see her next week. And she really wants him to kiss her, but she refuses to because she doesn't trust him yet. And then before he goes, she's like, you know, we're not attached anymore. I can go have sex with anyone I want. To try and, like, get under his skin, I guess.
Yeah.
And he's not fazed at all. Because he knows that she will not, because she is still in love with him.
Yeah.
I mean...
which is good.
He leaves then. And then Rhiannon comes and tells her the news. So Dain was promoted to be their wing leader. And now Rhiannon is the squad leader. Okay, last chapter. So it's the guide to excelling in the scribe quadrant.
I remember last time we read this book and I couldn't say it. Scribe, yeah. Every time.
Scribe. So apparently tome requests must be recorded and filed, and not doing so is a dereliction of duty, and they could be punished, which is yikes. So I guess we skip to Violet and crew. They're in their next class, which is called RTC. And essentially it's how to survive if you get separated from your rider or behind enemy lines. So, like, what do you do? And essentially he just says, like, yeah, I'll teach you stuff in here, but the practical knowledge is going to be, we're just going to come up behind you and kidnap you. Yeah. And, like, he says, he's like, we have kept this course a secret on purpose because we don't want anyone prepping for it. So the prof sort of says, like, they're going to have 2 evaluations. One is in a few weeks and one is around mid-year. Obviously, they're not going to tell anyone the evaluation, but essentially it's just practice for physical pain, physical torture. Like, someone says, like, do you mean torture, sir? And he just says, yes. So that's going to be fun.
Also wild.
Yeah. So after class, Violet goes to the archives to talk to Jinya. She lied and told her she needed books about the founding of Basgiath because she's prepping a defense about why it's here instead of in the capital city. And Jesnia goes in the back and looks for him and comes back and just gives her 2 of the books, and everybody is happy.
So this chapter starts with the Book of Brennan. And I guess his advice is, it's one thing to cross the parapet, but don't watch others if you can help it. So obviously we jump right into Violet and Rhiannon and Nadine on the parapet taking names.
Can I just say that?
You can.
I find their timings weird. Like, okay, so in my section, there was a mention of, like, I've survived this for 9 months, or like, we've been doing this for 9 months. And like, Xaden being like, I tried for 5 months to like stay away from you. So like, they're going through like 3 years of training, but it doesn't seem like it's actually a full year, because they literally graduate, have a party, and then like 2 days later, it's like, time for parapet again.
I think it's a week, but yeah, I get what you're saying. I guess, like, maybe they don't count the time before they actually started talking. Like, I don't know. I guess if you probably did up a timeline, and somebody might have done this online, maybe it would make sense, but...
Yeah, it just doesn't seem like they're going through a full calendar year.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's like, we've been doing this for a year would make a lot more sense than everything else they're saying. Good point. But I don't know. Yeah, so we're assuming it's a year to the day since the beginning of the last book, which is like, that's how I like books. I like when books are 1 year. But this book isn't a full year, is it? It can't be. Time does pass, though. So it's hard to say. Because, like, every time I read something, it's like, and now a week has passed, and I'm going to see him, or he's coming to see me. So I get confused with the times in this, too.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So you just said there, I thought that you were going to say something about who the fuck is Nadine?
Well, that too.
Because, like...
Who the fuck is Nadine?
I don't remember them at all from the first book. I think vaguely there was a mention this week of, like, oh, she's getting along with people with relic marks now. So I think she was one of the bitchy ones in the last book, maybe.
Right.
But I absolutely cannot remember. Anyway, but she's fucking everywhere for a little while. So yeah. Dain is there too because he's the wing leader, and Violet wants to throw him off because she's so pissed. And he keeps trying to talk to her, and he looks so heartbroken, and she's just like, he's such a good actor. And I'm like, I really don't think he's acting. So they talk a bit about how, like, in their year on the parapet, it was raining, and Nadine is surprised that her mother didn't stop the rain because her mother has, like, a storm power and can stop weather and start weather. And it's like, obviously she wouldn't do that. It would be cheating and favoritism. Like, she's a powerful woman. She knows how to get there and stay there.
So, I also feel like they want...
Why?
Like, because doesn't that make it a bit more high stakes, and it really weeds out the winners from the losers from parapet, right? Like, crossing in the rain is harder than crossing not in the rain. So, like, wouldn't you want, like, the ones that can cross in...
Yes. I understand, like, it's not management. I'm just so bad at, like, this war college and, like, lieutenants and all this stuff. Like, I don't know rankings very well. But, yeah, I get, like, her mother and Panchak and now Varys and all them, like, they would want it to be harder. Like, obviously, the cadets wouldn't. Yeah, that makes sense. Dain just says that apparently only 91 dragons agreed to bond this year. So it doesn't matter if more get across because there's only so many dragons anyway. Xaden is supposed to be back today, and she thinks that maybe he'll explain the book that he left on weaving fabric into traditional Terrish knots. Because he left her a book, and he left her fabric, and he left her a note saying he meant what he said. Even when he's not with her, there is only her, and he's fighting for her. And that's another moment. Violet is interesting, because I'm just like, I think he left it because he wants you to know more about him. I don't think there's a whole explanation to this, but okay.
Yeah.
Nadine basically says she doesn't need to be there, but she's bored, and Rhiannon, as, like, the next leader in command, is allowing it, but Dain is just annoyed by it. And I'm just like, obviously we're just getting more FaceTime for Nadine and the reader.
Wait, Rhiannon, what's Nadine's role? Like, I understand that she's there, but, like, who, like, do we get...
She's just like a second year like Violet.
Is she on their squad or their wing?
Yeah, she's in their squad.
Okay. Was she always in their squad? Or is she a new member?
Not a new member this year. I think she's a new member since sometime last year when they had to change around the members. By that I mean in the first book. And I don't remember why they changed around the squads.
Okay.
Maybe like so many people died that they got rid of one of the squads and put the stragglers on all the other ones, like something like that.
Right. So like, why is Dain annoyed that she's there?
Because it's a job for two people. And he's like, why are you here? And she's like, because I'm bored. And it's like, it's also a bit weird to be like, I'm going to watch first years cross the parapet
and die.
Because I'm bored. Yeah.
Okay.
But I also think like he wants more of Violet's attention, even though it's stupid. Rhiannon basically tells Dain to fuck off.
Love it. Can she do that to her wing leader, though?
Well, she's just like...
Or is it a good-natured... Just fuck off.
No, she doesn't actually say the words fuck off, but she's like, throws the rules in his face to be like, you know, I get to make this call because she is directly under me.
Yeah.
If anything becomes an issue, then it goes to you. This is not your job. Kind of thing. So it doesn't actually say fuck off, but it was like kind of like implied.
Right.
But then she asks him about the new commandant, obviously, Varish, who we talked about a few minutes ago. But he says that Varish thinks that the school has gone soft and he's friends with Dain's father. We're like, good, that's great. Sure, he's great too. So all the kids, I call them, I know they're like, what, 20, 19? How old are they?
Well, Violet just had her 21st birthday.
So they must be 20.
Yeah, these kids crossing the parapet.
Yeah, all the new kids show up, like one at a time. They're going upstairs. And all Violet can do is like write their names and say good luck. Like she's not allowed to say anything else to them. And she watches like the first few, but then stops after she sees the first fall. And she does notice one aggressive person, though. There's one guy who gets on the parapet and like throws the person in front of him off. And Rhiannon calls him Jack Barlow Jr. And Violet thinks of Jack then, and she thinks of him pushing energy into her body during one of their fights. I think the one where she not poisoned him, where she, was it oranges he's allergic to? Like she put oranges in his mouth and he had an allergic reaction. But he started using power at that point, and she says pushing energy into her and rattling her bones. And I wonder if this is like, because I don't remember what his power actually was. So it kind of makes me wonder if this is like our first clue. You know?
Yeah.
But anyway, we get more. So she looks up and she recognizes a guy, and I completely forgot that this happened. But his name is Cam. But then he tells her that his name is actually Eric Greycastle. And she thinks his green eyes match his father's, and Dain asks if he's sure, and if his father knows, like, that he's here, and this kid says it's none of his father's business, and it's none of Dain's business, and Violet then, like, tells him what squad she's in to get him to join their squad if he lives. Rhiannon is like, who was that? Because it definitely wasn't Eric. Like, you guys acted super weird. And Violet feels really guilty for how many secrets she's keeping, so she tells her the truth and says that he is King Tori's third son. And she can guarantee that his father doesn't know that he's here because his brother died in threshing. So I'm sure that's going to come up at some point. But I don't remember it at all from reading it the first time. Then Liam's sister shows up. And this is the whole reason that Violet wanted to be on the parapet. So her name is Sloane, and her hair is, like, blowing in her face. And I'm like, how is she this not smart? Like, you'd want to have your hair back. So Violet gives her a hairband, and Dain, like, warns her that she's not allowed to help or do anything. But she completely blames him for Liam's death, so she's just like, you can fuck right off. So she gives her the same advice that Myra gave her to, like, keep your arms out, keep walking forward, don't look down. And Sloane recognizes her and says that she knows what really happened, and that she knows that Violet got her brother killed because he died for her. And then Violet just agrees, and Sloane tells her to go to hell, and that Liam is worth 100 of her, and she hopes she spends eternity paying for what she cost her, and what she cost all of them. And, like, in Violet's head, Taryn just says, like, it wasn't your fault. And Violet just responds to Sloane and says, feel free to hate me, but do me a favor and put your arms out so that you don't see Liam before I do, i.e. die.
Yeah.
I don't know what I was expecting, but it did kind of surprise me how, like, angry Sloane is, but, like, I get it.
Yeah, I find that annoying. I find that an annoying trope because it's like she's gonna have to deal with this girl's, like, hatred and vitriol just for the fact that, like, she's grieving in that way. So many books do it, and I don't like it.
I almost wish that it was a guy. Like, if it was his younger brother and he hated her this much.
Maybe.
I wouldn't hate it as much because, like, we get enough of the catty bitchiness, and there's a lot of it in this book from what I can remember.
Yeah.
In, like, later parts of it. And I don't need it.
Yeah.
And I know it's, like, I don't know, like, anybody should be able to play any role and still have the same feeling to it, but there's just so much woman-hating women in books that I don't need this, even, like, I actually can understand why she does hate her, but I don't need this one.
And, like, I feel like it just stems from, like, a history of, like, pitting women against each other and, like, you know, I know in recent years, love triangles are typically one girl, two guys, but, like, so many books have that, like, oh, a girl and guy are falling in love, but he has an ex-girlfriend who wants him back.
This fucking book.
Right? And it's just, it's so tiring. Like, girls are not always after their ex. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if my ex from when I was 18, like, if I found out that they were with someone else, I'd be happy for them. You know what I mean? Like, not all girls are catty bitches who don't want their exes to be happy or only want them to be happy with them. And it's just really tiring to constantly have that narrative pushed in our face all the time. So, like, I know this is for a different reason, but I would just love to see a book where girls don't hate each other on sight just for something not in their control.
Yeah. And, like, we had it last book. Imogen hated her last book.
Yes.
And we get it even worse with the actual ex thing later in this book, which is a reason why I didn't want to keep reading it. But I just, like, I don't know. I feel like if it was his little brother and he said the same things, I'd almost be okay with it.
Yeah.
Which, like, is shitty, but you just see too many women hating women in books, and I'm just over it. I'm over that narrative. People aren't really like that in real life when they're adults and they're healthy. Like, it's not a thing.
Yeah.
And if it is, then they need therapy.
Everybody just needs therapy. Yeah.
It's true. Anyway, that's my rant on that, and I'm sure it'll come up again. Sorry. So we kind of, I guess, time jump an hour, 2 hours, whatever, and 71 candidates fell off the parapet, and you can feel the fear of the first years around. Obviously, that's a normal thing. Sloane is called to First Wing, but then Dain speaks to the wing leader of First Wing, and they switch her over to Fourth Wing, because he knows that Violet's like, it's like a peace offering to her to get Sloane in her wing.
For fuck's sake.
And her squad.
Yeah, well, we don't want your fucking peace offering, Dain.
Yeah, but she actually is like, oh, I'm glad, because she's close to me now. But not glad to him, just glad it happened. So Sloane walks over and she just says that she refuses and she wants to be in any squad but this one. But Rhiannon steps in and is like a badass and is just like, this is your squad, you have no choice. Like I love her like stepping up into this
role,
like,
the leadership
role. I'm like, she's good. And then Imogen tells her to stop acting spoiled and get in formation, and she does because obviously like she knows Imogen and she respects her. And then Rhiannon talks to Violet and says like Sloane wants her dead, and she's like, what's going on? And Violet says that like Sloane blames her for Liam's death, and she's like, I'm doing selective truths. This is obviously a theme in the book, is her trying to tell
her selective truths.
Yeah. But she's also like, it's better to have Sloane in my squad because then she's not allowed to kill me. Which is just funny. But true.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, this is the same as last year. All the dragons show up, and of the wing leaders, and then there's one that she doesn't recognize. It's a one-eyed orange dagger tail, and it's Varish's. And a first year, like, near them pukes, and Sloane is kind of antsy, but Violet tells her not to move or she'll die. And then she asks Taryn in her head about the one-eyed orange dragon, and his name is Solus, and he's Varish's. Obviously, we just figured that out because he's the only one that it could be. But she says, like, he looks unstable, and Taryn tells her to, like, keep her eyes on him. So Dain finishes a speech, kind of the same as the one that Xaden did last year, and Violet's like, nah, it's not as good.
So did each of the wing leaders get to do a speech?
No.
So
because Xaden only did it. Xaden's the only one that did it last year.
So Dain,
I guess they just chose.
Dain's just trying to be Xaden.
100%. Yes. Yep. Yeah. So yeah, Dain does a speech, and then Kath like breathes hot air over them all, and then that's when the runners start. So the runners end up behind like Fourth Wing's group, and Solus is like glaring, and Taryn is like, keep your eyes on him, and Violet yells, get down, and jumps over Sloane, and then fire like singes her back, and like everyone around them. And Taryn is obviously super pissed, and the people who acted when Violet screamed to get down are alive, and the others aren't. And at least half of Third Squad were killed during that, which is just insane.
Is that her squad, Third Squad?
I don't think she's, no. Because, like, it's nobody not nobody we know. It's mostly people we don't know. But they are in Fourth Wing. I forget what squad number she is. There's too many things. Anyway. But her back is so torched, like, she pulls off the front of her shirt because the back is completely burnt through. It's, like, not good. Panchek just yells at them to get back in formation and says, like, they don't balk at fire, and they're just like,
and so
we would have died.
We don't duck? We just let ourselves die?
Yeah, basically. Violet looks around and sees Imogen, and she's just, like, looking at a spot, and she tells Violet that I think it was Kieran is dead, and that's one of the people that
came back with them,
yeah. So Violet starts to wonder, like, was this intentional? Were they trying to, like, take out her, Imogen, and Kieran with this one? Yeah. So then Varys does his little speech, and he basically says, like, they're only as strong as their weakest link, and, like, looks at her, and she's like, oh, yeah, this is obviously about
But
me.
also, she is obviously not the weakest link, considering she warned everyone to get down, so, like, she's pretty intuitive.
Yeah, and also, like, she got through a year. I know that she has, like, her things that do make her not as strong as the other people, but, like, I don't know. I don't need men to be underestimating her as much as they still are.
Yeah.
Someone bolts again, and Solus leans forward to, like, take them out, but Taryn shows up and, like, lands behind her and, like, crumbles part of the wall and is just there in his, like, magnificent glory. We love him. And he basically roars at everyone, and the wing leader's dragons just, like, move away from Solus because they're like, we're not part of this. And Taryn basically threatens Solus that he'll, like, eat Varish whole, and then he'll take Solus's other eye, implying that he took the first eye. So we're like, interesting.
We're like, woo woo, go Taryn, go Taryn.
Yeah. So Solus retreats then, because obviously Taryn is bigger and better. And Varish just, like, glares at Violet, so we're like, oh shit.
But again, it's been established so many times that you don't control your dragon. What the hell is she supposed to do?
Well, and this, we'll get into this at the end of this week too, or, like, the beginning of next week, I think it actually is, but it's stupid. So another chapter starts, and it talks about the wards. They were formed by the first 6 at Basgiath, and it was by the hatching ground. And that's basically, we get the exact same information during this book, so I assume that this is, like, something that she reads during this part.
Okay.
But, so Violet wakes up from a nightmare, and she's had it, like, the same ones every day since Xaden left. She wraps her knees and then goes outside, and Imogen shows up and she says that she's going with her. But she also says she can't figure out why Violet is running every morning. And Violet just says it's because she won't make it. But then they're kind of cut off because Rhiannon comes over and asks what's going on, and Violet says that she's running, and Violet just kind of, like, brushes her off, because, like, people keep telling her, if you can't lie to your friends, you gotta keep your distance. So she's, like, trying that now because she's doing a poor job. So her and Imogen go to run, and Imogen asks what she means, like, she won't make it, and Violet says Soleil didn't make it, and she has nightmares about the moment in the last book where Soleil and her dragon were on the ground, and one of the venin was, like, taking energy from the ground and sucked it from Soleil and her dragon too, like, sucked the life from them because they were touching the ground. So, like, I don't know how fast you'd have to be able to run. It seems insane. Like, I don't even think it's possible to run that fast.
No, probably not.
But anyway, Imogen just says, we're not fast enough yet, but we will be. So Imogen is going to run with her. Later on, they're in battle brief, and Markham brings a scroll in, and she realizes, like, I guess he's the head of the scribes, of the scribe quadrant, because she was his protege kind of thing, and he was, like, expecting her to be in the scribe quadrant and all that in the first book. But she realizes, like, obviously he must know everything, because he has to be, like, changing shit up so that he's telling, like, he needs to be in on it.
Yeah, because we already know that
they've been meddling with history books and stuff.
Like, I guess they already know that the Griffins are not behind all the raids, that it's actually, like, the venin and stuff, right?
Yeah, well, some of them are the Griffins, some of them aren't, but, like, yeah.
The deaths and everything like that is not it's not a Griffin issue.
Yeah. So, yeah. So he has to know. We've decided. So he tells them that there were 2 Griffin attacks this week, and the Griffins were undetected, stole supplies, and burned down houses, and a Griffin and rider were found, but burnt on sight. So, like, they didn't question them or anything. And Violet just thinks, oh, they were just trying to get weapons. Like, that's all that was. And then the second was at an outport, and it was attacked, which surprises her, and, like, she ends up, like, dropping her pen or something. So he asks, what's up? And she says it's weird that 2 outports were attacked, like, this year, and she wonders if this is a new tactic. And he kind of says, like, yeah, we were thinking the same. And then they go to ask, like, the first years what they think, because that's what they did last year in this class. It's kind of their thing. But the first years are all useless. So Rhiannon asks if they think that the enemy knew about the outpost being emptied for the war games, and that's why they attacked. And you're like, what a fucking idiot, Dain's dad. Like, you can't just empty an outpost. That's insane. But Markham agrees and says, like, there must be a delay in the information, because, like, it was emptied, but they attacked, like, 5 days later, and it was already, like, people were back again, so it like, they didn't know right away. Violet asks where the Griffins, like, went, like, what they were doing, and her professor says, like, they went to the armory. So the professor is Professor DeVera. And she asks, like, what they should do now, like, what their course of action should be from here. And someone in the class suggests, like raising? I know that's not how you say it, but, like, with a Z.
Yeah, raising.
Raising, is it? Okay. So raising some of the, like, communities nearby of, like, the Griffin Riders or whatever they call themselves.
Oh my God.
But, yeah.
Let's just murder a bunch of people.
Yeah, exactly. That's this one student's suggestion. We're like, great. And I think Violet even says that, like, this girl is somebody that used to hang out with Jack Barlow, and we're like, oh, yeah. Fine. But Dain kind of, like, cuts in and says, like, that's against the Codex because they're not supposed to retaliate. They're just supposed to defend, apparently. And Deborah agrees with him. So Violet then asks, like, how many riders were hurt. And apparently 1 was killed and 4 were injured, including Deborah. So she actually, like, I got a scratch on her arm or something. But she was in that battle.
Oh. And
Violet kind of, like, we're in her head, and she's kind of wondering if Deborah knows the truth. And she kind of thinks that she doesn't. And I'm inclined to agree that this one professor doesn't know, but Markham does. So yeah, after class, she goes up to Bodhi and she asks to help, but he says that he has direct orders not to let her. And he says her job is to strengthen her shield and stay alive. Fair enough. Rhiannon comes over to talk to Violet and says she thinks the school is hiding something, which Violet is just like, oh shit. But she says there's something going on in the healer's quadrant. Nolan is exhausted, and there are guards at the back room, which is new, and she thinks they're hiding something there. And Violet is just, like, kind of relieved that it's not anything about what she thought, like, Rhiannon was going to bring up. And I feel like she kind of brushes her off a bit too fast, but Violet is just like, oh, maybe they brought the injured riders here. And Riddick is nearby, and he says, like, oh, maybe they brought a Griffin rider, and they're torturing them. So, like, interesting. But there's something going on. And Violet doesn't care enough, in my opinion. So, Violet just, like, takes her lunch on her own and reads her book about the Six, but there's nothing new. And I think what she read was what we got at the beginning of this, that no new information. So then their assessments are later where, like, the first years all fight and you see if they're fine. Yeah. And Rhiannon goes over to Violet and asks if she's mad that Rhiannon chose Sawyer to be her executive officer instead of Violet. And Violet's just like, no, I would be the worst choice. Like, I need to fly off every 2 weeks, so there would be no reason to choose me. And Rhiannon's like, okay, good, that's what I thought too, but, like, you're avoiding me. But then they're interrupted before Violet really has to say anything else, because Sloane is being paired with Eric, who is the prince, to do her assessment, but Sloane asked to fight Violet instead.
Do we know that Eric is the prince? Yes.
Yeah, because she told...
we found out at Parapet.
She knew it on the...
Yeah. Okay. We just haven't really heard much about him since then.
Nothing. This is the first mention.
It's like, oh yeah, the prince is here, but oh well.
Yeah, and she hasn't even tried to talk to him. I'm like, I thought you guys were, like, semi-friends or something, but nope.
Right.
I'm glad they didn't make it into another triangle, because I would have, like,
that would be a quadrant at that point, because it's Xaden, it's Dain, I feel like, it's Eric.
I feel like Dain would already be chopped off there. Although by the end of this book, it's, like, not anymore. It's not really a possibility, but it's kind of like, could be.
I don't like it.
Anyway, me neither. Yeah. So Sloane tries to fight with Violet. And Imogen is just like, are you trying to die on your first day? And Sloane just says, you told me in your letters last year that her joints just pop out. And then Imogen just looks at Violet and she's like, I can explain. And then she just says, I didn't like you last year. And I actually love Imogen. I love her so much. And she says, like, Violet is an acquired taste. The professor in this thing basically just says, like, he can't unleash Violet on a first year because of who trained her. I'm like, I don't think we needed to add that in. Like, anyway, fine.
You don't have to be such a dick.
Yeah. Like, she has her own merits. It's not just about who trained her. But anyway. So then we get, like, the first year that threw somebody off the parapet and they likened to Jack Barlow comes over and is like, oh, are one of you Sorengale? Because obviously Sloane asked to fight her instead. And Nadine just jokingly says that it's her. Why? We don't know.
Because it's Nadine being a funny pants.
Yeah. And he just snaps her neck.
Bye, Nadine!
Right?
You were in the story for a hot second.
And, like, heavily in the story. So I'm not really surprised it happened, but I was also like, why is she so heavy in this story? And then it happened, and I was like, oh, that's why. I get it. Okay.
Yep.
So, yeah. She did.
She did.
And I'm like, this is just another, like, layer of guilt to throw on Violet. Like, she needs therapy. Like, Liam died for her. Nadine died because she said she was her. Like, this is not good for her. So then we get a new chapter, and we get an excerpt from a letter between, like, the school and Violet and Myra's mother. And it says that Myra was attacked in school, and they believe it's because of who their mother is. Makes sense. Violet basically says then, like, no one interfere, and she pulls out her dagger, and she says, like, I'm Violet Sorengale. And then she flings her daggers at him, and, like, he puts his arms up, and they literally land in his arms. He, like, blocks them with his arms, and I'm like, ugh, but okay. And Darna yells out, and Violet's just like, you should be asleep, and then she puts her shields up so she could focus on fighting. And we're also like, this is not a good sign, and Darna should be asleep. Like, she's supposed to be in the deep sleep that, like, I think you talked about at the beginning of one of your chapters is, like, really important for the development of dragons is this deep sleep. So, go back to sleep, Darna. He pulls the daggers out of his arms and just drops them on the floor. So gross. And then she thinks of, like, Xaden teaching her not to make big moves because she's small, so she, like, runs and dives and, like, cuts his tendons as she slides past him, and he, like, falls to the ground, and then he can't stand up because, like, his leg tendons, so gross. But he starts, like, dragging her towards him, and she, like, slashes his arm with her dagger, she kicks him in the face, but then he, like, gets her with a hand on her throat, and he tells her to fucking die already. And then he says, and I quote, secrets die with the people who keep them, which is exactly what Dain's father said to her when he was with Varish a while ago. Or, anyway, at one point this week. So, like, I don't know. Maybe you shouldn't say that. But she is looking into his eyes, and they're a light brown, but rimmed in red. I didn't catch this. My first read through. And she immediately, like, says, oh, it must be some kind of drug he's on. And I'm like, oh, cool. Fine. He's on a drug.
Sure.
No, he's not.
He's not.
No. So then she grabs a dagger off of, like, her ribs, because she has a bunch stashed there, and starts stabbing him repeatedly in the kidneys until he releases her and is just, like, on top of her. So she has to push him off of her and move sideways and pull herself away from him. Dain, like, rushes over to ask if she's okay, but she's like, his father sent this guy to kill her, killed Nadine. Like, this is ridiculous. And she just tells him not to touch her, and she pushes herself up, she retrieves her daggers, and she uses the dead guy's clothes to clean them. The professor guy, Emiterio, comes over and asks if he can touch her, and she's like, oh, I must have said that out really loud. But also, everyone should ask consent before they touch you anyway. So he just, like, touches her face and looks into her eyes, and he's like, you have a concussion. But she refuses to leave, and she thinks, like, she can't leave like last year. So Imogen comes over, and she kind of leans against Imogen for a bit. And Violet tells Imogen that Atos sent that guy and that they're being targeted. And Imiterio just says, oh, it's likely because of your mother. This happened to your sister, too, which is exactly what they talked about in the letter at the front. So they get back to the fight between Sloane and Eric, and Violet basically just catalogs everything wrong with Sloane's fighting, which is a lot. And Riddick asks Imogen if she's sure that Sloane is Liam's sister, but Imogen just says, like, she wasn't fostered with fighters. So you're like, okay, so that means, like, she wasn't fostered with her brother either, which is very sad. Like, it's not even just a year they've been separated, it's even longer. So that's depressing. Yeah. And, like, obviously makes you understand a bit why she's so angry, too. So later, Violet goes to her room, and she can sense him and that he's pissed. And it's been 8 days instead of 7, so she, like, goes into her room, and they're talking. And he says that he should have told his commander to fuck off. Obviously, that would have gone poorly. But he, like, immediately checks that she's okay. And she tells him she didn't even know the name of the guy that tried to kill her. And she just says, like, she doesn't care about the first years, and she doesn't really care that she doesn't care, like, and that it's a lot. And he's like, well, that's what they want. That's what they want you to feel, like, not be desensitized to death. Like, that's part of the point of being here.
Yeah.
So she asks how it is in Samara, and he jokes about her asking questions to, like, get to know him. And she's just like, no, this isn't a game. Like, you're supposed to be telling me the truth about things. Like, this is, I'm just asking you this separately. But he says that Samara is different because he has to prove himself all over again. And it's annoying. And he says it's the last name more than the relic because his father led the rebellion. So people are obviously judging him immediately by his name. And he says it's actually not so bad for Garrick. It's worse for him, which he's happy about. And he says, like, you know what it's like to be judged for your name. And she says, yeah, but you have it worse. And he says, only on this side, which is true. And then she starts thinking, like, there's room enough for him to stay in her bed, but she can't let him because that would be a terrible slope. But then she asks if he warded her room because she says, like, she thinks the other day Rhiannon tried to come in and was, like, flung away when she tried to walk through the door.
Yeah.
Which is just kind of funny. And he says he did, and he warded against visitors and sound, and the only way in is if somebody is, like, touching her. And she says, like, she's surprised he didn't just ward it for them, but he says it's her choice. And, like, he's very much okay with her sleeping with other people.
Does this mean he's sleeping with other people?
No, because she asks him in a second.
Oh.
He says he won't. Yeah. But he's like, if you want to have somebody in here, it's soundproofed. You can break the armoire. Everything will be fine. Like, nobody will hear. And I'm just like, oh my god. Okay. Oh. And then he kind of, like, implies that they could break the armoire if they want to. And it'll only take 3 words. And she thinks the 3 words are, I want you. But she refuses to give him power. We know what the 3 words are, because it's what all 3 words are.
There's only one set of 3 words.
Exactly. So then he asks her how her week was, and she says, like, she was on the parapet, and she had to be there to help Sloane, and that Sloane hates her, and he says, it's impossible to hate you. I tried.
He keeps going back to that.
Yeah. But she says, like, Sloane blames her for Liam's death, and he says if she blames anyone, it should be him. So, like, they're both taking blame for Liam's death, which is unfortunate. Ugh. And everybody still needs therapy.
That has not stopped.
She then, like, asks him what it makes her to, like, not want to watch the first years die or know them. And this is kind of where he actually gets into like, the school. Because he says, like, that makes you a second year. He says, it's actually harder when they're younger than you. The first year is when some riders lose their lives, and the second is when they lose their humanity. So it's all like a part of this school's plan for them. Yeah. And then Bodhi just like comes and knocks on the door, and I'm like, Xaden, when were you gonna break this armoire with her? You haven't had time. Like, that would have been a very quick quickie. But he just leaves, and we're like, okay, cool. They're just gonna spend no time together, I guess. Great. But yeah, before he leaves, he does give her a letter. And he says, like, when she gets to Samara, he's like, the 3rd floor, south wing, second door on the right. So, like, where her room is. And then she asks if it's warded to let just them in and anyone he wants to sleep with. But he just says, no, it's only warded for them. So that's him saying, like, he's not going to sleep with anyone else. So then we get another chapter excerpt, and this is one of the ones where it's like, wait a second, what the fuck is this book? Because it's from a recovered letter from Xaden to Violet, and we're like, what does that mean? Because at the beginning of the book, it's like, at the beginning of the book, it also says that, like, this has been translated and people's names are kept as true story and, like, all this shit. So I'm like, does that mean everyone's dead? And it's her friend...
Jesinia, or whatever.
Yeah, I can't remember her name. But it's her scribe friend that has actually done
transcribing,
the translating. Yeah, so I'm like...
what the hell is going on?
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, great. So, in this letter, we're assuming it's the one he just gave her. But Xaden tells Violet that, like, Garrick was his best friend, and Garrick was like his Dain, but trustworthy. And Bodhi is like his little brother after Liam. But obviously now Bodhi is like...
which is weird, because
his main
Bodhi is actually related to him. Like, they're actually cousins. And,
yeah.
But Liam was closer.
Yeah.
Well, but I guess they grew up. Like they were in the same foster home,
Yeah. A few mornings later, she's still thinking about his letter and smiling. And she thinks, like, it was just stuff about him. Like, how he waited on the roof for his father to come home. And, like, there was nothing in it that was damning or anything. It's just, like, literally facts about him, which is cute. He's trying to let her get to know him, because that's what she complained about. Imogen can tell why she's happy and asks why she doesn't just take him back yet. But she says they don't trust each other and it's complicated. And Imogen is just like, no, never mind. You have friends to talk to about this, not me. And Violet's like, aren't we friends? And she's like, no, we're co-conspirators with a vested interest in keeping each other alive.
Rude.
I'm like, okay. So they're getting back from their run, and Jesinia is waiting for Violet, and Imogen is, like, super wary to just, like, leave Violet with this random person, because people are trying to kill Violet. But they kind of all sign back and forth for a bit, and I do love that, like, it seems like all of the people that have the relics have learned how to sign, which is just nice of them. Not nice of them, but it's just nice that it was taught to them. So Jesinia then gives her an old book, and it's about the first 6, and Jesinia asks Violet for help. She's trying to translate a book, but is struggling, and it's a language that Violet actually used to send secret letters to Dain in, so she knows it really well. Violet then is like, sure, and she says she's good at keeping secrets, because obviously, like, Jesinia isn't really supposed to be asking for help on this. She's supposed to be able to do it herself. And she helps her translate, and I thought that there was going to be something in these passages that was going to be important, but there was not. But Jesinia tells her that they're, like, making progress on translating dead languages into the main language that's here. And she wants to show her. But Violet's like, I'm not allowed back there. But Jacinia says she would make an exception for her and that it's not very busy on Sundays. So we're like, that's interesting. So then they see a second year getting hauled out of, like, their corridor into, like, the main passage. And Jacinia says, like, it was her fault. And she says, like, she reported them for a book that they tried to take out. And Violet is just like, what book was it? Like, what do you mean? But she doesn't tell her. And she's just like, I gotta go, and runs away. And we're like, okay, I guess, like, this is not good. So, and we're hoping she's not gonna report Violet's books.
So, wait, the second year gave out a book, and Jacinia was like, oh no, that's not allowed, and then reported her, so then she got arrested?
Something like that. Like, I guess the second year asked for a book, and she was like, that book's not allowed. But I don't know, like, did she know the book wasn't allowed, or did she just write it down? Like, you're supposed to write down every book that somebody takes out of a library, so I don't know. But it's just showing us that there are dangers to getting books in the scribe quadrant, yes, I guess. Yeah. Like, you can't just take what you want willy-nilly. I guess that's where we're going.
I mean, it makes sense.
So, we jump to a bit later, and they're walking to flying class? Dragon class? I don't know. Flying dragons class. So, Rhiannon comes up to the group, and she has mail, and Violet gets a letter from Myra, but she's, like, disappointed that it's not from Xaden, and we're like, he gave you a letter, he's not going to send you letters in the mail. But anyway, you're going to see him in a few days.
Yeah. Although, like, once a week is hard when you're used to, like, essentially living with someone, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But they're also broken up.
I know.
But Rhiannon can tell that she was, like, disappointed and asks if she was hoping for one from Xaden, and then she asks if they're together. And Violet says, not anymore. And she tells her that Xaden wasn't honest with her, so she ended it. And Rhiannon is like, oh my god, was it another woman? She's, like, ready to, like, throw down, yeah. At this. Yeah, which I love. But Violet just laughs and says, like, no, it's more complicated. But then she asks Rhiannon about Tara. And Rhiannon just says, like, they're both too busy because they're both in leadership roles now. So they're both, like, they've decided to see other people if they want to. And she kind of is like to Violet, like, we should go out and get laid. Get our minds off of things. And Violet's like, maybe. I'm like, you wouldn't. I don't care. But Violet kind of, like, looks back to her letter then, and whole paragraphs of her letter are just, like, blacked out, like, redacted. And she shows Rhiannon, and she's like, what the fuck? So, like, clearly someone's reading their mail and
redacting stuff,
only letting... Yeah. So, Riddick asks Violet then if Taryn has said anything about another black dragon in the Vale. And he's like, yeah, somebody saw one and is talking about it. And she worries that, like, someone saw Andarna.
But, like, everybody knows that Violet is tied to 2 dragons.
Yeah.
What are they gonna do when Andarna shows back up? You know what I mean?
Idea.
Like,
nobody's thought that. They're
gonna have to be like, oh, Andarna grew up. She was a child. Like, I don't understand what they think their plan is going to be.
There is.
I know, but they need to start thinking about it because she's in the dreamless, quote unquote, dreamless sleep.
And she's not, because she keeps getting up.
I wonder if that's, like, there are so many voices in her head from bonding with Violet, and therefore probably, like, so Andarna is bonded with Violet. Does that mean she also has a bridge to Tarn?
I feel like all the dragons have bridges to each other.
Yeah.
But I don't think, like, I think the dragons can speak to each other in their heads, but I think that's just something they can do. Yeah. But I don't know, because, like, does that mean that Andarna has a bridge to Tarn? Would she then have a bridge to Xaden and Scale? Like, that is too much for a baby little head.
Well, so that's what I'm saying. Like, is she constantly getting woken up because everybody is talking to each other through their bridges? And it's disrupting her sleep. But baby dragons don't normally have any of those connections because they don't bond, right? So that's why they sleep in peace.
Yeah. And I think that the reason she keeps getting woken up is instances when Violet is in danger. Like, she almost died then. Nadine died. And that's when Andarna woke up. So, like, I feel like that is what's happening. Yeah. So it's bad for her. But we kind of get into this whole dual dragons thing because Varys shows up. And he, like, compliments Violet on her necklace. But then he's like, she barely squeaked by and a first year tried to kill her. And we're like, yeah, but he was giant. Yeah. Like, whatever. But he asks where her second dragon is. And Taryn is immediately annoyed. But Varys orders her to have the second dragon there next week. And she just says, like, dragons don't take orders. And he's like, no, they don't. But you do. And we're like, this is problematic. She is sleeping. And then Varys says it's ironic that her father was writing about feathertails and she bonded one. And she's just like, that's coincidental, not ironic. And I love the pedanticness. Like,
I also love, like, thank you for using the correct terminology, because she's correct. It's not ironic. Alanis Morissette got a lot wrong.
She did. But she's also, like, she didn't think of that. Like, I don't know if she didn't, I think we get more of it later and I can't remember. But, like, this is the first, I think, that we're really hearing that her father was working on Feathertails. Did that come up in the last book?
I don't think so.
It'll come up again. So third year students start coming to the field now, and they basically show a running dismount, and, like, their flying teacher is there being like, this is what you're gonna learn this year. So Dain is on Kath's shoulder, and then he slides down to her paw, and then jumps and runs on the ground. And says, like, they basically explain, like, this is good for when you're in combat. You have to get on the ground fast. Dragons can't land, can't slow down, whatever. But Taryn says, like, they'll need to adapt it. And today they're only working on moving from, like, the saddle to the shoulder. So,
which is hard for Violet because she has braces that keep her in the saddle.
Yeah. So it's not ideal. Also, she's not going to be able to, like, land on the ground and run because her joints won't be able to take the impact. So I think that's what they're going to need to adapt specifically, but we'll see.
I feel like she should wear a harness and attach a rope. And then Taryn needs to have the other attachment, and she can just, like, hold the rope and get, rappel down. And then unclip herself right before she touches the ground. Same thing. Job. Look. Yeah. I would be an amazing dragon rider. Look at all this innovation in here.
Yeah. So Bodhi tells... So we basically skip to, I guess, later that night. Maybe it's days later. But she's going to see Xaden. So her and Bodhi are on the, like, field waiting for Taryn to show up to take her to Samara. And Bodhi tells her to tell Xaden that they're working on the next shipment and that it's raw. And she's like, what next shipment? What does raw mean? And he's like, I'm not telling you anything. Okay,
that's such an asshole thing to do.
Yeah. So then she starts thinking about, like, how the competitions are starting up again next week, and she needs to start, like, looking at her opponents and start poisoning them again, which I fucking love. But Bodhi is still kind of talking, and he just says he's never seen Xaden care like this about anyone before, and that includes Catriona. And she's just like, who the fuck is that? She's immediately jealous. But Bodhi is just like, if I asked you to forget I said that, would you? And he says he doesn't want Xaden to kick his ass after having to fight off 2 assassination attempts. And she's just like, what do you mean assassination attempts? And we're like, yeah, you're not the only one that they're trying to kill.
Oh.
But Bodhi also says, like, he he was naked in the bathrooms when somebody attacked him, and he had to take them out. And I'm like, that is awful. I fear nothing more than being attacked when I'm naked. Ooh. And then, but she just is like, dude, I don't know you well enough to talk about who I'm sleeping with. And he's like, fair enough, okay. So then Taryn shows up, and Varish and 2 lieutenants show up, and they're like, we're here to search your things. One of the lieutenants, Nora, just dumps all of her stuff on the ground. Like, all of her change of clothes, her clean clothes, everything, in the mud. And I'm just like, what the fuck? But the other lieutenant is just like, was that necessary? And she's like, he said to search. Like,
they're just assholes, yeah.
Yeah. And then Varish, like, picks up her journal and another school book to look through it to see if there's, like, anything in there. And there isn't. And he just says, see you in 48 hours, and that he'll ponder her punishment for her feathertail not showing up in the meantime. We're like, oh, good. That's gonna be great. So they leave then, and she says, like, Bodhi knew that was going to happen. And he also tells her that Imogen and Iowa, I think that's the name, somebody else that came back with them, I guess, were attacked today. So they assumed that she would be searched. So, like, they're trying to kill everybody that came back. Like, we can kind of gather that. She's pissed because she doesn't want to be used like that.
I don't understand how she was being used.
I don't know. But he just says it was an experiment, and he didn't want her to, like, expect it. And she's like, so what was the variable? And he's like, basically to see if they'd check Taryn. Which, like, can you imagine? He would lose his shit. And Bodhi feels a bit bad, whatever. But she gets on Taryn's back, and there are 2 packs already on his back that are, like, bigger than his saddlebags. And it's, like, a shipment of, I guess, the
So what would they have done if they did search Taryn?
But who's gonna get on his back? He's not gonna let anybody search him. He would kill them first. They'd be screwed, though. There's no way they could have searched him. I guess, I don't know. They could have got on their own dragons and shone a flashlight on his back. So this chapter starts with another excerpt from the letter from Xaden to Violet. And he says that Sigale told him that she chose him for his violence, but he thinks it's because he reminds her of his grandfather.
So she was his grandfather's dragon as well, right?
Yeah, which is like, I think we found out about it in the first book, and you're like not supposed to have dragons within the same family, but nobody's going to tell her what to do because
she's wild.
Yeah, and like her mate is the strongest dragon ever, and you can't tell a dragon what to do. So like, they were like, fine. Like, what are these rules for if you're not actually going to enforce them? But okay. And obviously this is going to come up again, and it doesn't really come up this chapter, but it definitely comes up again. So she gets to, I think it's Samara. I already forget. But anyway. And Taryn tells her to be careful because it's known to be brutal here. And it actually is on the front line. And there's a drift of griffins, like, across the ridge. So it's really not safe. So he waits until she's inside the wards before he goes off to see Sigale. She walks to Xaden's room, and he's not there. So she, like, opens her senses to, like, find the bond to try to follow it to him. And she ends up, like, following it to a basement, and she can hear shouts and follows the bond the way towards that. And she ends up in, like, this wooden is what's coming to mind, and I don't mean wood. Sorry, my brain's not working. This dirt-packed place.
Oh.
And it's, like, excavated into a pit, but then there's, like, a railing above. And, of course, it's a fighting pit. And, of course, she shows up and Xaden's fighting.
Of course. Although, I will say I totally forgot about this. And now that we're discussing it, I'm like, oh, yeah, I really like... I know it's an of course, but I'm still kind of like, oh.
Yeah, it's such a trope, but...
I can get behind it.
It makes more sense in this book than it does in other books. Because, like, They have fighting classes. They're in a war. So I'm like, I guess it makes sense.
Yeah.
So Xaden's fighting this guy, and he is shirtless, and she's like, whoa. Hot. And she immediately kind of like, she obviously knows Xaden now. So she immediately notices that he's holding back. And she just, I guess, out loud asks why they're fighting. So the person next to her says, there's only one pass for lieutenants this weekend. Jarek has it, and Xaden wants it. So they're fighting for it. And I'm like, imagine how shitty it would be if you just weren't the best at fighting. You would never get time off ever.
And like,
that'd be sad.
But also imagine how shitty she must feel to be like, not shitty, but like, imagine what it would do to you to look and watch someone fight for the right to spend time with you. Because that's essentially what he's doing right now, is he's fighting for the time off so he can be with her this weekend.
Yes, but also so that their dragons can be together.
Fine. Make it less romantic.
I 100% will, but it is still romantic because he's like fighting to let their dragons have their time together, which I think is sweeter. It makes me like love him more than if he was just using it to have time with her.
I guess.
Because he cares about them. And he's also like, it's not all bad. We'll get there. So yeah. Violet calls it brutal, but she just says, like, there's no blades and they don't use their signets, so, like, it's fine. It could be worse kind of thing.
They're not fighting to kill.
Yeah. And then the woman says that she thought that Jarek would have taken him in less time than this. And Violet just says, like, Jarek's not going to take him. Xaden is playing with him.
Yeah.
And she's just like, what? And then she looks at Violet and she's like, you're her. And like, Violet is thinking, shit, like, is she thinking, like, the general's daughter?
Yeah.
Or is she thinking, like, the one whose dragon is bonded to Xaden? Or, like, all this shit that she doesn't want really to be associated with. But then this person says, you're Lieutenant Sorengale's sister. And she's like, oh, but it's kind of a nice surprise.
Can I just say, though, like, I'm really bothered that everybody's like, you're the girl that bonded Tairn. You're the girl that bonded two dragons. You're General Sorengale's daughter. You're Lieutenant Sorengale's sister. You're Xaden's girl. You're Brennan's sister. Like, I just wish she could be known for herself.
Yeah, but she's not at a school yet, so she doesn't have anything really to be known for other than her two dragons. I know,
but still, it just, like, it bothers me that she's, like, just being referred to in all these different ways, except for, hey, you're Violet Sorengale, aren't you? You know what I mean? Like,
I do, but, like, if Rhiannon, or however you say her name, was here, like, she wouldn't be anybody. Because, like...
No, I know.
She's on the same level. They wouldn't even have anyone to associate her with. They'd be like...
I know.
You're some person.
Yeah.
So...
But I'd still rather be able to, like, be nobody and then introduce myself and be like, I'm Rhiannon.
Yes.
I'm the squad leader of Fourth Wing right now. You know what I mean? As opposed to Violet, like, everyone already has these preconceived notions of who she is and what she does and all this stuff based on... her relation to other people.
Yeah, I don't dislike the dragon one as much, because that actually is to do with her.
Yeah.
And, yeah, but I do agree, like, it's always like, oh, your mother. But she actually appreciates that this person's like...
Your sister.
Yeah, and she's like, oh, you know my sister? And she's like, yeah, she has a hell of a right hook. And you're like, oh, her sister probably fought for days off, too. Yeah. So we get, like, a fair moment of Violet just being super turned on by Xaden fighting and how hot he is, and she just thinks, like, she's so goddamn in love with him that it hurts. And she's trying not to be, but that's not really how it works.
But also, like, and I know that we're going to get into this a little bit more, but, like, anyway, we're going to get more into it, but I feel like so much of their relationship is dictated by their physical attraction to each other. Like, do they actually love each other? Like, I don't know.
Well, they don't know each other.
They have a heck of a physical chemistry, but like...
Yeah. And I think that was kind of what Violet was saying, like, last book a bit, when she was, like, trying to get to know him, and he was, like, kind of pushing her away in the beginning. But, like, yes, they have this huge physical attraction, but I don't think they really know each other yet. It's, like, trauma bonding.
Yeah.
Because, like, their whole school experience, and then after school, going to war experience, everything they do is trauma. So...
Yep. Ugh.
Yeah. So someone, I guess, near her, like, yells out in a, like, I don't know, cheering way. I guess. It just sounds weird to say yells because it's not like this person's hurt or anything, but I guess they're cheering. But Xaden ends up looking up and he sees her and he's, like, surprised. So he ends up getting hit.
Of course he does.
Yeah, of course. She tells him to stop playing through their bond, and he calls her violent, which I think is the first time he's said it so far this book, because I think that Rebecca Yarros has heard everyone be like, it's too much, and she toned it down this one.
Now, if only Jennifer Armentrout would get the same message. I said what I said.
That's fair. I kind of appreciate it, though. Like, I don't mind the nickname Violent. Violence, whatever he calls her.
Yeah.
But it was a bit much in the first book. Like, it was too much. So anyway, he then hits the guy twice, the guy falls down and taps, and he's out. So Xaden comes towards her, and he is so hot, and she can't remember why she's denying him. And the girl next to her says that her name is Cornelia, and then she tells Ryerson that she'll tell them to take him off the schedule for 48 hours, but he says he only needs 24, and Jarrett or Jarek, can't remember,
I think it's Jarek,
can have the other 24. Okay, Jarek can have the other 24. So that's nice of him. He won the 48, and he was like, nah, I only need 24. He can have the other.
Jeez.
All she can think about while he's, like, there is, like, she just wants to touch him, and I guess Cornelia leaves, and they're the only ones left there, and he asks what's spinning around in her head. And then he tells her he's minutes away from taking her back to his room to continue this conversation, but she says that the bed is a bad idea, and he says they don't need a bed.
I mean, he's not wrong.
Right?
Pretty sure in the first book they didn't get to the bed right away.
I know, that's why he said it.
Yeah.
And he like kind of implies that they haven't used a bed one time before. And then she says, hypothetically, if I wanted you to kiss me, but only kiss me. And before she finishes anything else, they're kissing.
Wow.
And you're like, gee. And then he, like, lifts her legs up around his waist and pushes her against the wall. And I'm like, this isn't just kissing. This is intense kissing. But they're, like, kissing like their lives depend on it. And she thinks, like a moth to a flame, and she accidentally says it down the bond, and he says that he's more than willing to let her burn him, and she just thinks, like, that's not what she meant. She thinks she's the moth, but he thinks he's the moth. They're both so, like, far gone and think that the other one is not or something. Like, it's just so, like, you both love each other, stop it. He kisses her neck, and she loves it, and, like, she kind of takes her time into talking herself into being like, we're gonna have sex. But he pulls away, and she just says, like, we can keep it at sex, like we talked about doing last year. And he's just like, yeah, I want to fuck you, I want to make you come until you remember how good we are together. But he refuses to use sex to get that, like, to get her back. And he says he's a fool when it comes to her, and he'll kiss her whenever she wants. Because if it's whenever he wants to, then he might live with his mouth attached to hers. And he begs her not to offer him her body unless she's offering everything. And
what sort of a man turns down sex because he wants more?
They don't have enough time for this. I'm like, you need to just have sex and then you get together later. What if you die? Sorry, I lost where it was. It was here somewhere.
Yeah.
But he wants her more than he wants to fuck her, which is just like so sweet.
Like the ultimate panty dropper, though.
Yeah, I'm like, this is just, you can't say that and expect her to just like go back to your room and sleeps like head to feet like next to each other, so you can't actually. But anyway,
they can cuddle.
So yeah, but we don't even get that. This is what pisses me off. But anyway, he tells her the 3 days that she was unconscious, I guess when Brennan healed her, he spent thinking of everything he could have done differently, and now he's decided like he's gonna do this differently, which is like fair.
Yeah, I mean they worked with what they could at the time.
Yeah. So they walk out of the room, and he says that she'll trust him again, and she says, yeah, when you stop keeping secrets from me. And he says, you need to trust me even with secrets. And you're like, you both need to just, like, stop bringing this up, because you're at an impasse.
Yeah.
Obviously, talking about it is not working. Just chill with it so you're not angry at each other all the time.
I would hate to see her try and form a relationship with Aelin.
Oh my god. That'd be amazing.
Queen of secret keeping.
Right? Oh, poor baby Rowan. Yeah. So they go to his room, and he has a private bathroom because nobody wants to room with him. Because, like, first year out of college guys normally don't have private bathrooms. So it's, like, lucky, but it's also, like, he's probably not having the best time here.
Yeah.
She tells him about how she was searched before they left, and he says that he, Garrick, and any lieutenant with a relic was also searched, but nobody's dragons were searched. And like you said, like, that's kind of dumb. She asks him then, she's trying to, like, sorry, startled me. So she's trying to, like, dig for some information for him. So she asks if the only thing that can kill the venom is what powers the wards. And he says yes. And he, like, hands her one of the daggers.
Didn't she kill venom last year?
Yeah. With lightning.
So why is she asking him this now? When she knows she's killed one.
Yeah, but other than her lightning, the only thing that's killed them is this dagger.
Right, okay. Sorry. I was so confused.
Yeah. But she's trying to get information on the wards, because this is her whole scheme, is she's trying to figure out how to get the ward stone in wherever her brother is working.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is just to get some more info on the wards. So he hands her a dagger, and he tells her it's like alloy, and there's like a specific way that metal is used to hold power. I'm not gonna lie, it kind of confused me, but I took what I could.
Yeah.
And he says that, like, the daggers hold power, but they do need to be imbued again, and, like, only certain riders can imbue them, and there's an armory downstairs that is full of these daggers to, like, keep the wards working. And they haven't always used daggers, but Xaden guesses that at one point Melgren had a vision that the daggers, or the wards, or something would be integral, and that's why they started using them.
Right.
But that's kind of a guess that he has. And then we get, like, they need the dragons for the crucible, and they need a luminary to make the like, dragon fire hot enough to smelt it.
Smelt what?
Which
the alloy? Or the wardstone?
The wardstone into alloy? Like, I also don't really know what a crucible or a luminary is. So
I don't know what a luminary is. A crucible, I think, is just like, isn't from my time watching Blown Away, the reality competition reality glass blowing show on Netflix. I think a crucible is like the container that they melt all the stuff in.
Okay. Because like in oh my god, I forget what they're called. Anyway, the books with Simon Snow, the crucible casts them together. Yeah, Carry On. The crucible like picks who your roommate is.
But it's just a big cauldron-y thing, right?
I don't know. How does it pick?
I think it's like just like it's a specific type of container.
Okay. So the dragons put their fire into this containery thing.
Yes.
Which, like, if it has something to do with glass blowing, it makes sense.
It is a container in which metals or other substances may be melted or subjected to very high temperatures. Because I guess you need something that's very specific, made out of specific materials, so that when you're melting the metal inside of it, you're also not melting it.
Yes, that makes sense. And then the luminary makes it hot enough. But I'm like, shouldn't a dragon's fire be hot anyway?
One moment, please. So a luminary in the archaic definition, because in the common, like, modern definition, a luminary is a person who inspires or influences others. However, in the archaic definition, it is a natural light-giving body, especially the sun or the moon, or an artificial light.
Yeah. So based on this book, though, like, reading later, like, it's, a luminary is giant because they need, like, they were worried about if Tairn would be able to carry it later on his own.
Right.
So in my head, it's a forge.
What's a forge?
Like, it's just like a big oven that you can, like, put a whole sword in. Okay. But, like, that's just what came into my head. But I don't know. I don't understand. I don't know. Anyway, so that's why they need a luminary. A bunch of stuff I don't really understand.
Oh, okay, hang on. A luminary is a device which intensifies dragon fire. It is used to forge weapons capable of killing venom. The luminary can heat the dragon fire hot enough to make these weapons. So,
does it say anything about what it looks like? Because, like, that's what...
Viscount Tecarus's luminary is described as a large ring of vibrant blue crystals.
Oh. Yeah. Because, like, that's what we just got, is that the luminary makes it hot enough. But, like, fine. Like, do you blow the fire through this large ring and then it heats it hotter in the, like, other thing? Like,
I thought that you would blow your dragon fire onto the, like, so it's a ring of crystals, onto the crystals themselves, which would then heat up even hotter than the dragon fire, and then you would melt the alloy on it.
Into the crucible?
Into the crucible, yeah. Yeah.
Listen.
Or maybe it's a ring that you would not have, like, upright, but on the ground, and you would lay the crucible...
Inside it is hot?
Maybe, or maybe, like, you could lay the crucible, like, on top of the crystal, and then blow on the...
It's like a stove?
Yeah, like, blow on one, but then the crucible on the other one would get hot. Like, no, yeah, I guess like a stove, like...
Stovetop.
Stovetop, yeah. So...
Yeah.
God only knows. What if I looked...
Yeah. Well, you know what? They are doing a Fourth Ring TV show. Maybe they'll get to season 2 and we'll figure out what a luminary is.
I would really like that. Because now that we're talking about it, I'm like, yeah, what the hell?
Yeah. And, like, I know the first time we read it, we really did a, like, quick read. But still, I
know, I completely missed this.
I was like, oh, they need a luminary. Don't know what that is, but it's a need.
But okay, we get it.
Fine enough. Yeah. So I guess back to her digging for information. She asks if the wards or the ability to boost the wards came first. And he's just like, stop worrying about the wards at, like, the Navarre wards and worry about your own. And then he attacks her shield. And that's where we end.
What a place to leave off.
I know. They're together and we're like, ooh, maybe we'll get something. And then the next week literally starts with her back. I'm like, how did they sleep? Did she go to a different room? Did he leave for the night? Like, did they sleep in the same bed and we didn't get it?
I know, that's very upsetting. I would like to know. I'd like to know if they cuddled.
Or did he sleep on the floor? Like, did they wake up? Did she wake up and his arms were around her? I want to know.
Oh, okay.
So yeah. That wraps it up for this week. If you want to get in touch with us and share your thoughts on anything you heard in our episodes, or if you have any book suggestions, please reach out to us by email at coffeeandcoread@gmail.com or on Instagram or Facebook at coffeeandcoread and coffee.coread on TikTok.
So, next week we will be reading chapters 13 to 26 of Iron Flame. Make sure to follow along, and if you're enjoying our chats, don't forget to follow, rate, and review wherever you get our content. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you on the next page.